Hey, everybody. I'm Susan Davis from NPR News. And tonight we're covering the fourth and final night of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Donald Trump will accept his party nomination for president for the third time. This will be his first extended remarks since the assassination attempt against him last Saturday at a campaign rally. So stay with us for our live coverage, which will begin at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll be simulcasting on your member station and here on video. And I'm joined now in studio by my friend, NPR senior Washington editor and correspondent Ron Elving. Ron, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Susan.
Tonight, obviously, Ron, very big night whenever the president makes his acceptance speech, but I don't think we can discount the effects of the weekend and the failed assassination attempt at reshaping how Donald Trump is approaching the speech tonight.
When he entered the arena tonight, the bandage on his ear was still present. I think there had been some feeling that perhaps he would be past it a little bit or not really want to have the reminder for everyone who watches his lengthy remarks tonight. But at least earlier in the evening, it was still there. And that is perhaps just a visual symbol of what is present in the mind of everyone present at this event and everyone who's going to be watching this event. And that is the very close call that the president had just last Saturday. And of course, the controversy about how that possibly could have happened has been boiling up ever since and is only going to continue for weeks and months. But the effect on this convention is already quite clear. It has galvanized the Republicans, it has unified the Republicans, and it has all but deified Donald Trump. In fact, there have been several speakers who very strongly stated that it was the hand of God that protected his life last Saturday afternoon.
I think that it will be very interesting to see the rhetoric that Donald Trump uses tonight, because he has said in other interviews that he ripped up his whole speech that he was going to give and wants to give a more unifying speech to the nation. And I think we have to be really frank here. That is not what Donald Trump is known for, and it's not what Donald Trump usually uses his political speeches for.
No, you're quite right. However, Donald Trump is also known for surprising people and for putting on the maximum impact show. And it would be a show of great impact for him to give a highly magnanimous, let's all reason together, kinder, gentler, to quote H.W. Bush back in 1988. For that kind of speech to come from Donald Trump would have a lot of impact. It may well happen, but on the other hand, I don't think everyone's counting on it. He may have torn up the speech he had before Saturday, but I think elements of that, and certainly elements of his persona, have survived.
It does seem to suggest that the party is really aware of what these two high-profile speeches mean. Most people have not been watching as much convention coverage as you and I have. But the vice presidential nomination speech, and of course the presidential nomination speech, is when most normal people will tune in and listen. And to me, it was notable last night that Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, in giving his acceptance speech, was, as our colleague Domenico Montanaro described him, first date JD, sort of all the best parts about myself without any of the drama up front. He steered away from his more sort of weaving from the norm policy positions. For example, he's one of the senators who's been most critical of U.S. support for Ukraine, past rhetoric on abortion, even the rhetoric he used on the day of the attempted assassination in a tweet largely blaming Joe Biden for what happened to Donald Trump. And that's not who he was last night.
And he was also not the vice presidential choice on Saturday.
True.
When he sent out that tweet. And it was some hours later, through the good offices of Donald Trump Jr., that he got the mantle, that the hands were laid upon him some hours after the shooting. And perhaps he was auditioning as attack dog, which is the traditional role for a vice presidential candidate, be the person who goes out and is the tip of the spear against the opposition. Perhaps he had already satisfied everyone he could do that, because he has been very harsh in his criticism of the administration. We didn't see that J.D. Vance last night. We saw the one who wanted to talk about his mom and his grandmom, Mama, and got the crowd chanting her name. And he was relatable. He was not necessarily soft. He was a quite firm presence, but he was reminding you that he was just 39 years old. He was showing you his family, and he was suggesting that he would be far more than just another attack dog, and that if necessary, he'd be one who could be leashed.
Yeah. Well, let's take a listen. We'll re-listen to J.D. Vance as we wait and anticipate Donald Trump's speech tonight.
Never in my wildest imagination could I have believed that I'd be standing here tonight. I grew up in Middletown, Ohio. A small town where people spoke their minds, built with their hands and loved their God, their family, their community, and their country with their whole hearts. But it was also a place that had been cast aside and forgotten by America's ruling class in Washington. When I was in the 4th grade, a career politician by the name of Joe Biden supported NAFTA, a bad trade deal that sent countless good jobs to Mexico. When I was a sophomore in high school, that same career politician named Joe Biden gave China a sweetheart trade deal that destroyed even more good American middle-class manufacturing jobs. When I was a senior in high school, that same Joe Biden supported the disastrous invasion of Iraq, and at each step of the way, in small towns like mine in Ohio or next door in Pennsylvania or Michigan, in states all across our country, jobs were sent overseas and our children were sent to war. And I agree. And somehow, a real estate developer from New York City by the name of Donald J. Trump was right on all of these issues while Biden was wrong. President Trump knew even then that we needed leaders who would put America first. Now, thanks to these policies that Biden and other out-of-touch politicians in Washington gave us, our country was flooded with cheap Chinese goods, with cheap foreign labor, and in the decades to come, deadly Chinese fentanyl. Joe Biden screwed up, and my community paid the price. Now, I was lucky. Despite the closing factories and the growing addiction in towns like mine, in my life, I had a guardian angel by my side. She was an old woman who could barely walk, but she was tough as nails. I called her Mamaw, the name we hillbillies gave to our grandmothers. Mamaw raised me as my mother struggled with addiction. Mamaw was in so many ways a woman of contradiction. She loved the Lord, ladies and gentlemen. She was a woman of very deep Christian faith. But she also loved the F word. I'm not kidding. She could make a sailor blush. Now, she once told me, when she found out that I was spending too much time with a local kid who was known for dealing drugs, that if I ever hung out with that kid again, she would run him over with her car. That's true. And she said, JD, no one will ever find out about it. Now, thanks to that Mamaw, things worked out for me. After 9/11, I did what thousands of other young men my age did in that time of soaring patriotism and love of country. I enlisted in the United States Marines. Semper Fi to my fellow Marines. Now, I left the Marines after 4 years and went to the Ohio State University. I'm sorry, Michigan. I had to get that in there. Come on, come on. We've had enough political violence. Now, after Ohio State, I went to Yale Law School, where I met my beautiful wife. And then I started businesses to create jobs in the kind of places that I grew up in. Now, my work taught me that there is still so much talent and grit in the American heartland. There really is. But for these places to thrive, my friends, we need a leader who fights for the people who built this country. We need a leader who's not in the pocket of big business, but answers to the working man, union and non-union alike. A leader who won't sell out to multinational corporations, but will stand up for American companies and American industry. A leader who rejects Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's Green New scam and fights to bring back our great American factories. We need President Donald J. Trump. Some people tell me I've lived the American dream, and of course they're right, and I'm so grateful for it. But the American dream that always counted most was not starting a business or becoming a senator or even being here with you fine people, though it's pretty awesome. My most important American dream was becoming a good husband and a good dad, of being able to give I wanted to give my kids the things that I didn't have when I was growing up, and that's the accomplishment that I'm proudest of. That tonight, I'm joined by my beautiful wife, Usha, an incredible lawyer and a better mom, and our three beautiful kids, Ewan, who's 7, Vivek, who's 4, and Mirabelle, who's 2. Now, they're back at the hotel, and kids, if you're watching, Daddy loves you very much, but get your butts in bed. It's 10 o'clock. But, my friends, things did not work out well for a lot of kids I grew up with. Every now and then, I will get a call from a relative back home who asks, "Did you know so-and-so?" And I'll remember a face from years ago, and then I'll hear they died of an overdose. As always, America's ruling class wrote the checks. Communities like mine paid the price. For decades, that divide between the few with their power and comfort in Washington and the rest of us only widened. From Iraq to Afghanistan, from the financial crisis to the Great Recession, from open borders to stagnating wages, the people who govern this country have failed and failed again. That is, of course, until a guy named Donald J. Trump came along. President Trump represents America's last best hope to restore what, if lost, may never be found again. A country where a working-class boy born far from the halls of power can stand on this stage as the next Vice President of the United States of America. But, my fellow Americans, here in this stage and watching at home, this moment is not about me. It's about all of us, and it's about who we're fighting for. It's about the auto worker in Michigan wondering why out-of-touch politicians are destroying their jobs. It's about the factory worker in Wisconsin who makes things with their hands and is proud of American craftsmanship. It's about the energy worker in Pennsylvania and Ohio who doesn't understand why Joe Biden is willing to buy energy from tin-pot dictators across the world when he could buy it from his own citizens right here in our own country. You guys are a great crowd. Wow. And And it's about, our movement is about single moms like mine who struggled with money and addiction but never gave up. And I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here, 10 years clean and sober. I love you, Mom. And you know, Mom, I was thinking, it'll be 10 years officially in January of 2025. And if President Trump's okay with it, let's have the celebration in the White House. And our movement, ladies and gentlemen, it's about grandparents all across this country who are living on Social Security and raising grandchildren they didn't expect to raise. And while we're on the topic of grandparents, let me tell you another Mamaw story. Now, my Mamaw died shortly before I left for Iraq in 2005. And when we went through her things, we found 19 loaded handguns. They were... Now, the thing is, they were stashed all over her house, under her bed, in her closet, in the silverware drawer. And we wondered what was going on, and it occurred to us that towards the end of her life, Mamaw couldn't get around so well. And so this frail old woman made sure that no matter where she was within arm's length of whatever she needed to protect her family. That's who we fight for. That's American spirit. Now, Joe Biden has been a politician in Washington for longer than I've been alive, 39 years old. Kamala Harris is not much further behind. For half a century, he's been the champion of every major policy initiative to make America weaker and poorer. And in 4 short years, Donald Trump reversed decades of betrayals inflicted by Joe Biden and the rest of the corrupt Washington insiders. He created the greatest economy in history for workers. Really was amazing. There's this chart that shows worker wages, and they stagnated for pretty much my entire life until President Donald J. Trump came along. Workers' wages went through the roof. And just imagine what he's going to do when we give him 4 more years.
That is Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance, a Republican senator from Ohio. And Ron, we were talking about tone leading into it, how J.D. Vance offered a softer version of his life story to the audience there. But looking forward to tonight, some notable speakers in the lineup tonight that I do think speaks to how Donald Trump has changed the Republican Party, because I'm not sure Hulk Hogan in other Republican conventions would have been given a primetime slot the night the nominee makes his acceptance speech.
Precisely. And in addition, we had Linda McMahon from Worldwide Wrestling. We also are expecting Dana White, who is the president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, to be the introducer of President Trump.
Really remarkable.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Not Melania, not Ivanka Trump, as at the two previous conventions, and not some major political figure, but Dana White. Now, this is a longtime friend of Donald Trump's, 20 years at least, and they have had a business relationship. Donald Trump brought the UFC out of New York and into his New Jersey club and then out to Las Vegas and helped it become a multi-billion-dollar business. So this is a long-standing relationship, but what is interesting about it is that really, to a very large degree, this is fight night at the Republican National Convention. We started the week talking about it being somewhat softened in light of the assassination attempt, but we've really come full circle now to the lineup tonight, to the emphasis on this, to the reminder of Donald Trump saying, you're going to have to fight like hell or you're not going to have a country, which is what he told the crowd on January 6, 2021, before they marched up the Hill and invaded the Capitol, which was closed, and tried to disrupt the certification of the 2020 election.
You also see tonight, if I think about the old traditional three stools of the Republican Party, Donald Trump has shaken up the economic stool, certainly in picking an economic populist like J.D. Vance and the future of the Republican Party. He's shaken up the foreign policy stool and thinking American first isolationist policy. But in the social conservative stool, evangelical Christians have provided some of the strongest, most enduring support of the sort of WWE era candidate. It is really one of the more remarkable things about Donald Trump's candidacy and rise. Perhaps
it's more remarkable to people who see it as a contradiction for evangelical Christians to be so embracing of a fight, bellicose, pugilistic sort of attitude.
I should just note quickly, Franklin Graham is also scheduled to speak tonight, which is what I was referencing.
Yes, indeed. And of course, he's the son of Billy Graham.
Yes.
Sort of the ultimate symbol of evangelicalism in modern United States, at least in the last sort of 50 years. So that seems to be a contradiction. On the other hand, there is a very strong overlap between Southern conservatives who are strong believers in the Baptist faith, the evangelical faith, more broadly, Assemblies of God, pick your evangelical church, but who are also very traditional Americans, rural Americans oftentimes, who have a strong tradition of fighting, in essence, of being inclined to defend their rights. And if that includes physical violence, they don't shrink from it. And I think that the message that this convention is sending over and over again is that when threatened, physical violence is not only justified, it's called for, it's necessary, and it's admirable. And we're going to nominate its avatar, if you will, at this convention tonight. What are you listening for when you listen to Donald Trump's speech tonight? We have talked a lot about the degree he's going to reach in terms of the heat of it. How much is he going to attack Joe Biden? Is he absolutely sure Joe Biden is going to be his opponent going forward in the next several weeks? That seems to be in some degree of question, more than at any time since the June 27th debate threw such a wrench into the Biden campaign. So it might make sense to spread some of the criticism and widen the field of fire, if you would. Get away from just Joe Biden, and talk also about Kamala Harris, and talk also about some of the other people in the Democratic Party who might be symbolic, if not necessarily candidates for president, but people who are symbolic of the party. That's possible. All right, Ron Elving, NPR senior Washington editor and correspondent. Thank you for spending time with me now and all evening tonight. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to bring you live special coverage of the RNC here on video and on your local public radio station, so please do not go away. I'm Susan Davis, and this is NPR News.
Good evening. This is live special coverage of the Republican National Convention from NPR News. I'm Susan Davis. It is the final night of the convention, and for the third time, Donald Trump will accept his party's nomination for president. Trump has said he has completely rewritten his speech after surviving an assassination attempt with a renewed focus to unite the nation. Trump will be introduced by his longtime friend, Dana White, the president and CEO of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. His wife, Melania, will make an appearance, but in a break with tradition, she is not expected to speak. However, his son, Eric, will address delegates. We're going to be bringing you live speeches and analysis all night on your public radio station and on video, which you can watch on many member station websites and at npr.org. We're going to be bringing you into our studios tonight and taking you to the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, which is where we will begin tonight. My colleague NPR correspondent Danielle Kurtzleben is on the floor of that convention hall. Hey, Danielle.
Hey, Sue.
So, Danielle, you were at the campaign rally at which there was an assassination attempt against Donald Trump, and you went directly into Milwaukee, where you have spent the last 4 nights on the floor of the convention hall. Sum it all up for me. Where is your mind right now at this moment awaiting Donald Trump's speech tonight?
I'm really curious what tone he strikes when he takes the stage tonight. Thus far, this RNC has been a real departure from your typical Trump rally. They've really scrubbed it clean of a lot of the controversy that Trump spouts at his rallies, or controversial topics, I should say. For example, we have heard very little talk of abortion, whereas Outside of this convention, Donald Trump will take credit for the overturning of Roe, or at least talk about how bad he thinks abortion is. That's one thing. At his rallies, he calls people jailed for their actions on January 6th. He calls them the January 6th hostages. We've heard none of that this week. We have heard very little about the supposedly stolen 2020 election. Of course, it was not stolen. Joe Biden won it. We've heard very little about that this week. This convention has been scrubbed clean of all of that. So I'm very curious how Trump talks tonight.
You've written a lot and reported a lot about how Donald Trump has changed the culture of the Republican Party. And I think nothing exemplifies that better, knowing that on this convention stage tonight, delegates are supposed to hear from both Hulk Hogan and the evangelical leader, Franklin Graham.
Yeah, there has been a set theme for each night of this convention. For example, foreign policy or safety. Tonight's theme is just Make America Great Again. And if I had to tell you what that means based on the list of speakers, the two themes that I can really pick out are fighting, as in Hulk Hogan, the CEO of the UFC, Linda McMahon, the former CEO of WWE, and also Jesus. We are going to have Franklin Graham, the preacher and son of Billy Graham. We had a preacher from Detroit earlier tonight. There's been a fair bit of talk about God tonight. This is the Trumpiest night that we have had tonight. Tucker Carlson. You don't bring Tucker Carlson up if you want to be warm, fuzzy, and promote a message of unity. Tucker Carlson was warmly received. Tonight, it really just seems like a night about Trump. And I will add, you can see it on the floor down here. People are wearing their glitziest Trump regalia. It's a lot of rhinestones, a lot of sequins, just the wildest Trump suits, dresses, everything that you've ever seen.
Danielle, thank you so much. We'll be back to you shortly, but I want to go up to the NPR booth where NPR's Mara Liasson and Franco Ordonez have been listening to the program this evening. And Franco, let's start with you. You've been covering this campaign. This is the first time Donald Trump will give extended public remarks since the assassination attempt this weekend. What has the campaign told you about how he's approaching the speech tonight?
The campaign says that, as you pointed out, that he wrote the speech, that he's been working on it, and that it's going to be very personal. I mean, I'm like Danielle, I am very curious what Trump we're going to get. Are we going to get the grandpa Trump that we've been hearing about all week? Or are we going to get the fight, fight, fight Trump that this crowd is really longing for, and as we have heard time and time again? I mean, this is really Trump's moment to shine. As you say, it's his first speech since the shooting. Will he reflect on what he feels? As, kind of sources have told me that he felt like he was touched by an angel. Is that going to come out today? Or is it going to be the strength versus weakness message that the campaign talks about all the time? And look, Dana White, the head of the UFC, is going to be introducing him. You got Kid Rock playing. You got Hulk Hogan. It doesn't speak to me that it's going to be Grandpa Trump, but I guess we'll find out.
Franco, it does feel like whenever we talk about Trump taking a new tone, we need to have this with a huge grain of salt here. This is something that has been said time and time before, and Trump often reverts to form. And also, we should note, even if his tone changes tonight, his policies are still very much the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I talk to the campaign, that is something that they repeat over and over again, that even if this is a unity message, it will be framed in a America First agenda. It will be unifying the Republican Party. It will be bringing the tent or growing the tent larger. We saw Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, and his former rival here. We saw Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, here. I think that's kind of the message that keeps repeating among Republicans here. I was talking to one of his surrogates early today. He said, yes, he expects unity message, but at the same time, he also expects a contrast. And that contrast is something they have been hammering over and over again. between Trump and Biden. We talked about strength versus weakness. It's also about success versus failure. They see Trump as the successful president from 4 years ago. They argue Biden is the unsuccessful president right now.
Mara Liasson, I know you have a lot on your mind, so this is when I just say, Mara, what are your thoughts right now?
Look, I'll make a really wild guess. I bet you're going to hear some national unity phrases that we're primed to watch for, because that's how they're selling the speech. But I think we're going to have plenty of standard Trump, us versus them. You know, I was the best president in history, and Biden was the worst, and it'll go on from there. He usually has something for everyone, and I wouldn't be surprised if this speech has it too. Look, I think one thing about unity, this has been a unified convention.
Sure.
The Republican Party is more unified than ever. There are no dissenters here, not a single one. And the prior dissenters have come here and bent the knee and changed their tune and embraced Trump. So that's for sure. What Donald Trump sees as national unity, other than that the nation should unite behind him, is still unclear, and maybe we'll get some answers to that tonight.
All right, Mara and Franco, we'll be back to you in a bit, but I want to go back to the convention floor where we have veteran Republican pollster and strategist Frank Lunch attending what I can only imagine is one of many conventions he's been to. And Frank, I want to start with this. Overwhelmingly this week, we've heard from the stage and from delegates a supreme sense of confidence that Donald Trump is going to win this election and maybe win it in a landslide. So I'm asking you to put your pollster hat on here and say, are Republicans being correctly confident or overly confident?
I think they're a bit overly confident, but make no mistake, I've not seen the Democratic nominee as weak, an incumbent nominee as weak as Joe Biden at this point in the campaign, and Donald Trump, who's noticeably run behind in 2016 and 2020. I'm looking around this convention hall right now, and I'm seeing people on stage that don't look like typical traditional Republicans. This has really been a remarkable convention featuring union members, African Americans, Latinos. People who you don't think of as being Republican are actively being shown, and the messaging, as a wordsmith, the messaging has been quite strong, quite optimistic. Yes, to your previous guess, there are the occasional attacks, the shots at the administration, but there's as much hopeful, optimistic language and a focus on exactly what they want to change. If I were advising this convention, which I do not. In fact, let me let you in on a secret. This is the first Republican convention since 1992 that I've not written a single word by a single speaker.
Wow.
If I were writing these words, a lot of them I would have written for this convention.
As we talk at this hour, it is quite possible that President Biden might decide to ultimately get out of this presidential race. And I'm curious, if that were to happen, does that scramble everything? Does that reset this campaign?
Yes, it does. And in fact, I'm saying to some of the Republicans here, be careful what you wish for. This is like the dog that catches the car. It's not good for the car, and it's really not good for the dog. People know Trump. They know Biden. They know the two administrations. They have a more favorable reaction to Donald Trump in every single poll on the key issues that matter. With Kamala Harris, everything is up for grabs. And there are other Democrats that are much stronger than her. Some of the governors, a couple of the senators. They should be very careful because they're trying to push Biden over the edge, but they don't know what comes up next, and that's actually more important.
It's one of the things that my colleague Mara Liasson, who you were just hearing from, says a lot, is that Donald Trump won in 2016 with 46%, and he lost in 2020 with a little over 46%. And it does seem that Donald Trump's appeal, the MAGA coalition, hasn't really proven that it can rise above that 47 maybe percent ceiling.
Well, all I have to say is that when she says something, I listen to her.
Me too.
But all I would suggest is, in the key swing states, Nevada, Arizona, big Latino votes, Trump is doing better than any Republican in recent times among Latino voters. The young black male vote under age 40, Trump is doing historically good among them, and that could be enough to bring home Georgia and North Carolina. And the ones that I'm watching the most, because they will decide this election, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, Trump is winning a shockingly high percentage of union voters. In fact, in our polling, take out the teachers union and the government unions, and Trump is actually even with Joe Biden among working class union voters. We've never seen that before. This is a new coalition. It's not one that I remember from when I joined the Republican Party, but the choice of J.D. Vance and his articulation of what it is to be a hardworking taxpayer struggling paycheck to paycheck, this is a message that works, and it's working.
What do you think? Is that what you think J.D. Vance brings to this ticket, that he's able to juice that sort of working class voter that has really been drawn into the MAGA movement?
Yes, and it's because he's authentically working class. This is who he is. Donald Trump was born wealthy. I mean, we forget that Trump's appeal to working class voters is ironic, considering that that's not his background. J.D. Vance, that's who he is. That's where he's from. He communicates that so well. You saw that in the last night's speech. Initially, I thought it might have been better for Trump to try to expand the coalition by picking a woman or an African American. After listening to the speech last night, I think it's actually quite smart of him, because in the end, there are more working class voters who truly live paycheck to paycheck than any other single issue or single attribute voter. And that's why it seems to be a very smart pick so far. We're going to have to see what happens in the debates.
Frank, I'm curious to get your perspective on this, because as you noted, you've been involved in conventions a long time, Republican politics your whole life. It certainly seems like the messages from this convention, a more populist Republican Party, a more isolationist Republican Party. Do you see this as sort of a turning point, finally, for the Republican Party as fully the party of Donald Trump?
It's more than a turning point. That's a great question. The truth is the party has already turned. This is not the party of Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush. This is not even the party of George W. Bush or John McCain. This is a new agenda with different voters. And let's talk about the negatives, the people that Trump is going to lose. Suburban women, upper middle class, concerned about abortion and some of the issues that we haven't talked about. Trump is going to have problem in the suburban areas that were once solidly Republican. However, he gains more votes from people who live paycheck to paycheck, which is 1/4 of America, than he loses in the suburbs. So overall, it's a net gain. And remember, in virtually every survey, Trump is either tied or leading Joe Biden, and particularly the key swing states. This never happened in 2016, never happened in 2020. Yeah. It's a new party with new polling, and I think that this coalition may be strong enough to hold through November.
Do you think more states are being put on the map? We're seeing polling in places like Minnesota and Virginia that suggests that maybe they're more in play than we've been paying attention.
You just picked the two states that I'm watching very carefully. Minnesota always looks close, but never comes the way of the Republicans. The same thing with Virginia, which used to be a Republican state. I would also add New Hampshire to that. So we got 3 states with enough electoral votes to give Trump the victory should he lose Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I've heard the idea that you take the Pennsylvania governor, and that brings over a significant amount of votes to the Democratic ticket. But if he takes the states that I mentioned and just one of Virginia, Minnesota, or New Hampshire, and he wins the election, it's going to be a wild ride over the next 110 days. And we don't even know what's going to happen on the Democratic side yet.
Republican pollster and veteran strategist Frank Luntz, thanks for talking. I always appreciate your insights.
This is an honor. Thank you for having me.
And joining me in studio tonight and all week long, my friend, senior Washington editor and correspondent Ron Elving. I think wild ride for the next 110 days seems like a fitting description of this race where it stands.
perhaps an understatement. Let's face it,
Yeah.
it's been off the chain for several weeks now,
Yeah.
where you literally have to be watching the news constantly because things happen. Much of the country was watching that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday afternoon with no idea, of course, that it was going to be a historic event. They just thought it was another Trump rally, looked a lot like it. The crowd looked a lot like a typical Trump crowd. He got started in very typical Trump fashion. It seemed like business as usual. And then, of course, the shots rang out. So now we're living in a different world.
Yeah.
So we just have no way of predicting, first of all, what's going to happen on the Democratic side, although we've seen the pendulum swing back and forth between, Biden will never get out, to, well, Biden's going to have to get out.
It's volatile, to say the least.
Back to, again, no, he'll never get out, and then he'll have to get out. So that can't go on much longer. They've already delayed what was going to be an early virtual vote by which the delegates would affirm that he was the nominee. He has 90% of the delegates already committed to him. So they're his delegates. It's a question of when they actually vote. And if they were to move it up into the first days of August, well, that would seem to foreclose any possibility of there being anyone else on the ticket or anyone else in the top slot. So let's just say there's much still to happen. And then we have to determine how the person, if there is another person, stacks up against Donald Trump. How well does Joe Biden run if he's still the nominee? And there will be changes in circumstances. I think that you have to take the volatility of the year up to now as an indicator of what we will see for the rest of the campaign.
And just to recap for a minute, we are currently on the convention floor just having a musical interlude, so you get to listen to Ron and I. Although I will say the house band at this convention has been pretty good. A lot of good covers of great Americana rock hits. That's a fair statement, I think, to say, Ron.
Absolutely. By convention standards, I'd had enough brass bands.
And we are awaiting main stage remarks from Franklin Graham, evangelical leader and son of the late Billy Graham. I am in studio with senior Washington editor and correspondent Ron Elving, and you're listening to special coverage of the Republican National Convention from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR's elections coverage comes from Saatva, committed to making handcrafted mattresses that help lull people to sleep and keep them sleeping soundly. More information is at saatva.com/NPR.
You're listening to live special coverage of the Republican National Convention from NPR News. And we're joined now by NPR White House correspondent Tamara Keith, who is also with us at the Fiserv Forum, but has had a very busy day talking mostly to Democrats. Tam, it seems quite possible in this hour that President Biden could consider dropping out of the race in the coming days. He is currently at his Rehoboth, Delaware house after testing positive for COVID. Before we get to the politics, what do we know about the president's condition?
His doctor put out a note today saying that the president is still doing well. He's still taking that antiviral drug Paxlovid, and he has that runny nose and cough, but his vital signs are normal and he doesn't have a fever. However, the vital signs on his campaign are a different matter altogether.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been the continuing drumbeat of notable Democrats publicly calling for Biden to get out of the race, adding to the list today Montana Senator Jon Tester.
Yeah, and Montana Senator Jon Tester is what you would call a frontline Democrat. He is highly endangered in a state that former President Trump won handily. And he is separating himself from President Biden, saying that Biden should drop out of the race. But he's not the only one. You also have Democratic leaders, top Democrats, who are putting out statements that are not at all endorsing the president. And they're not saying he's the party's nominee. They are saying things like he should consider his path forward, or they are very concerned about his legacy. Someone who is close to former President Obama said today that he is someone who is. Let me actually read you the actual quote there. He said that President Obama is protective of President Biden, both personally and his administration's accomplishments. Protective is not a word that says, go, run, Joe, run.
Yeah. I mean, you can read between the lines here and see former President Obama, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, all sort of playing a chess game in which they're clearly indicating that they would be okay with Joe Biden getting out of the race. So I'm curious, what is the White House telling you when you're pressing them on this very question?
Biden campaign insists that he is in the race, and why do you guys keep asking the same question? He's in the race, he's not going anywhere. That's what they say. That is the official word. But I did talk to a senior Biden advisor today who said that they feel like they just can't get a break, that there have been moments when it felt like maybe he was building some momentum, especially when he has had these rallies in blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. At those rallies, people have been telling him, looking him in the eyes, and saying, Joe, don't get out. Do it. Just keep going. But then you get back to Washington, and everyone is telling him that he has to go, that he's going to drag Democrats down with them. And this person I talked to said, at this point, it's just not clear that President Biden can ever really recover from this, that people now see him in a different light after that debate, that his flaws, his gaffes, his regular gaffes that are always a Bidenism, now those are seen in a different light, and people are looking for them. And this person just wasn't sure that Biden could recover from it. In terms of what comes next, though, this person says it could be Hunger Games, and they aren't sure what sort of campaign would rise from the ashes.
Tam, I would note I was just speaking with Frank Luntz and asked him the question, what does it do to the race if Joe Biden gets out? And he said, Republicans shouldn't be too confident in that moment, that it could scramble the calculations that everyone's making about Donald Trump on the ballot this November.
Well, one thing it would certainly do is divert attention away from former President Trump. He is someone who often captivates audiences, as we'll see here tonight. But if there is a Hunger Games situation in the Democratic Party, people are going to be watching that closely. One top Democrat I talked to, who's part of the Democratic National Committee, said that this is going to be the story of your lives if it happens, and that the convention and the lead up to the convention will be something that hasn't been seen in this country since 1968 or even before that.
All right, Tam, I'm going to let you go. We're going to go to the convention floor, where Donald Trump is walking through and approaching the convention floor. I believe, I'm trying to see correctly, I believe he is still wearing the bandage over his ear, and he is dressed in his trademark blue suit and red tie. It does look like he is being flanked by members of the Trump family. His oldest son, Donald Trump Jr., who spoke last night, is right behind him. It looks like a group of his grandchildren is also with him. I have to admit, I do not know all of the grandchildren's names, but we do know one of his oldest grandchildren, Kai Trump, addressed the convention last night where she talked about her grandpa. He's entering the family seating area where he's been watching a lot of the speeches play out all week long. We are certainly looking for a glimpse of his wife, Melania Trump. She is, as I said earlier, not expected to speak at the convention, but she is expected to appear on stage. And he is joined with, yes, it looks like a number of his grandchildren, and the crowd, obviously, all week long, completely living for the moment when Trump comes in. He just mouthed "thank you, everybody" to the crowd, clapping, standing, clearly getting a standing ovation on the Make America Great Once Again sign right over his right shoulder, and the family is taking their seats and lining up. We are awaiting the remarks of Franklin Graham, And while we await those remarks, I'm going to head to my colleague, NPR's David Folkenflik, who joins me now. David, we wanted to bring you in because earlier this evening, there was a speech from the main stage from former Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson. Here's some of that.
You know, I think it changed him. He reached out to Trump within hours of it that night. And what he said to me that night, having just been shot in the face, he said not a single word about himself. He said only how amazed he was and how proud he was of the crowd, which didn't run. And I thought two things. The first thing I thought was, well, of course they didn't run. His courage gave them heart. A leader's courage gives courage to his people. And the second thing I thought was, this is the selfish guy I've been hearing about for 9 years, really? Not a word about himself? About his people, period. And the second thing I noticed, which I don't think anyone has remarked upon in public, but I'm just going to since I don't have a script, like why not, is that he turned down the most obvious opportunity in politics to inflame the nation after being shot. To inflame the nation, which is an opportunity that almost every other politician I've ever met, and certainly his opponents, would have taken instantly.
Hey, David, thank you for being here. Before we get into our questions, since I have you here, I want to go back to the convention stage where Hulk Hogan has just started to give remarks.
There was so much energy in this room, I felt maybe I was in Madison Square Garden getting ready to win another world title. Or maybe I thought the vibe was so intense, the energy was so crazy, it felt like maybe I was going to press that no-good, stinky giant over my head and slam him through the mat, brother. But what I found out was I was in a room full of real Americans, brother. And at the end of the day, with our leader up there, my hero, that gladiator, we're going to bring America back together. One real American at a time, brother.
That was Hulk Hogan speaking from the convention floor, and I'm joined now by my colleague, David Folkenflik. David, I'm sorry to cut you off early, but when you have a chance to throw to Hulk Hogan for a minute, you got to take it, you know?
You don't just throw to Hulk Hogan, you body slam to Hulk Hogan.
You are here, though, of course, to talk about Tucker Carlson, who spoke earlier this evening. Obviously, this is a story you've covered a long time. He was fired from Fox News more than a year ago. Tonight, he was welcomed at the RNC with open arms. He's been sitting with Donald Trump in the family and friends box. Tucker Carlson, he's back.
Yeah, he's back, and he's able to sort of claim this resurrection in part because of the way in which Trump has responded to him, not only inviting him into his booth, as you spoke about, not only giving him this position of prominence on the final night, the night where Trump himself finally addresses the party faithful, right? But he also is going to take credit in a victory lap for the naming of J.D. Vance, the Ohio senator, whom has embraced a kind of populist nationalism that is very similar to what Tucker Carlson has embraced himself on the air, and more recently since his exile from Fox News, his ouster there and amidst scandal and litigation. Online as well, on his own platforms digitally. So he's going to take credit at a time when there are a lot of folks, including his former boss, Rupert Murdoch, the founder of Fox News, the controlling owner of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post. A number of folks in the Republican establishment didn't want J.D. Vance for just that reason, because he has at least rhetorically embraced positions that would seem to promote certain kinds of regulations that working class families might be in favor of and big companies might not.
I had a Republican member of Congress tell me a few months ago that he believed that Tucker Carlson was the second most influential person in the Republican Party besides Donald Trump. I'm curious what your take is on what Tucker Carlson means to the Republican Party right now.
You know, that's certainly what Tucker Carlson would have you believe. And there are times he has performed that role. You know, tonight he was attesting to Trump's humor, courage, and empathy, sort of validating Trump in a way that I think a lot of Trump's fans and voters find appealing and humorous, but also, offers somebody who's very smooth, who, as Trump puts a lot of stock in, looks the part. He also, let's be clear here, he talks about Trump as a unifier. not only as having been courageous after being shot at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, but as in inspiring people and in unifying people, and that he's been changed by this shooting and that this party is unified behind him. But let's be clear about the party that is unified. It's a party in which critics, including Vance, including Senator Marco Rubio, including Governor Ron DeSantis, have been brought to heel, or in the case of people like former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, have been cast out. And that's the way in which this party have been unified. And let's be clear, Tucker Carlson has been part of that process. He was an enforcer at that 8 o'clock perch, the most powerful single person in some ways on cable news as a political influencer on Fox, and now trying to arise in that same role online. And by elevating his influence with Don Jr., and he's sort of having this bromance with Donald Trump visibly embracing him in this way, Tucker at least gets to give off the aura of having that kind of influence once again.
David, thank you so much. We're going to head back to the floor where we're going to pick back up with Hulk Hogan addressing the RNC.
And I'm proud to support my hero as the next president of this United States. Guys, I've known Donald Trump for over 35 years. Hold on a second, hold on. I just had a flashback. Man. This is really tripping. The last time I was up on stage, Donald Trump was sitting at ringside at the Trump Plaza. I was bleeding like a pig, and I won the world title right in front of Donald J. Trump. And you know something? He's going to win in November, and we're all going to be champions again when he wins. And like I said, I've known that man for over 35 years. And he's always been the biggest patriot, and he still is. He's always told you exactly what he thought, and he still does, brother. And no matter the odds, he always finds a way to win. And when he's back in our White House, America is going to start winning again. Guys, over my career, I've been in the ring with some of the biggest, some of the baddest dudes on the planet. And I've squared off against warriors, savages. And I've even, like I said, body slammed giants in the middle of the ring. And I know tough guys. But let me tell you something, brother. Donald Trump is the toughest of them all. They've thrown everything at Donald Trump. All the investigations, the impeachments, the court cases, and he's still standing and kicking their butts. We never had it better than the Trump years. Back then, we had a thriving economy. We had strong borders. We had safe streets. We had peace and respect around the world. But then we lost it all in a blink of an eye. Crime is out of control. The border is out of control. The price of food and gas and housing is out of control. And the only person who can clean this up is Donald Trump. Guys, I really, really love this country. And I've lived the American dream. And I want my kids, your kids, and all those little teeny Hulkamaniacs out there to live the American dream too. This November, guys, we can save the American dream for everyone. And Donald Trump is the president who will get the job done. So all you criminals, all you lowlifes, all you scumbags, all you drug dealers, and all you crooked politicians need to answer one question, brother. What you gonna do when Donald Trump and all the Trumpomaniacs run wild on you, brother? God bless you, and thank you.
That was former wrestler Hulk Hogan doing what Hulk Hogan does at the convention at the RNC. Donald Trump is in the arena, and he's currently raising his fist at Hulk Hogan. Very pleased with that speech. And we go to the convention floor where NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben got to see it all. Danielle, I just have to ask you, what was that moment like?
Where the moment where he tore off the sleeveless shirt to reveal the Trump Vans shirt underneath was, I do believe, the loudest moment of the convention so far. I feel pretty safe saying that. And I mean, I was just thinking as he was talking, a guy who's hyper-masculine, loves spectacle, and mostly appeals to older Americans. I don't know if you can find a better avatar for the Donald Trump campaign than Hulk Hogan, really.
You know, at the points throughout this convention, when people have been speaking, they cut to Trump. And I have to be frank, a lot of times he, was kind of straight-faced or just nodding along. And he really seemed to be personally enjoying the Hulk Hogan speech in a way that he has not enjoyed as much some of the other speakers in this convention.
Right. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's been, you're right, like warmly receiving, politely receiving many of the people who have come to pay homage to him tonight. But this, I couldn't see him personally, I should say, but it is not surprising that kind of a performance really pleased him.
This transition on the floor that's playing out, we should note, and we'll go to him shortly, Franklin Graham is speaking on the floor. But Danielle, it's a hard turn to go from Hulk Hogan to Franklin Graham.
It really is. Now, Franklin Graham is the son of Billy Graham. For those who don't know, Billy Graham was the evangelist who was a spiritual counselor to presidents of both parties. Now, Franklin Graham is not exactly that. He is a preacher, but I've seen him referred to in the past as a prodigal son. He came late to the Christian faith. He was considered a sort of bad boy son of Billy Graham's. But he is not bipartisan, it is fair to say. He, for example, has courted a lot of controversy by saying things that controversial sells it short. So, some of it is downright hateful. He, for example, said that at one point that Barack Obama, when he was president, was born a Muslim. That, of course, is not true. During the 2020 Democratic primary nomination, he tweeted things about homosexuality, negative things about homosexuality, when Pete Buttigieg, now the transportation secretary, was running for the Democratic nomination. Upset a lot of voters then as well. So this is not a warm, fuzzy Christian. This is a very different breed of Christian.
All right, let's go to the convention floor and hear some of his remarks.
In 2016, he said he would defend religious liberty. And guess what? He did. In 2019, I was with him at the United Nations when the first president of history of this country stood there to advocate for religious liberty worldwide. When American citizen and Pastor Andrew Brunson was being held in a Turkish jail on false accusations, President Trump demanded that he be released. And he applied economic pressure and sanctions until they did that. I'm grateful and thankful for what he did as the 45th president of the United States. And I know that as the 47th president, he will keep his word to the American people to make America great once again.
That was evangelical leader Franklin Graham addressing the Republican National Convention. And we're going to go up to the NPR booth where we have a guest. Sarah Parshall-Perry is a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and she joins me now. Sarah, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You are at the Heritage Foundation, which has long been central to articulating the conservative movement's agenda. This time around, it's known as Project 2025. Obviously, your political opponents have been using this document to run against Republicans in the campaign. So I would give you an opportunity here to say, how would you explain Project 2025 to people?
Project 2025 is exactly the same thing that we've done since 1980, every presidential election, and provided to every candidate regardless of politics or political affiliation. In fact, not only were no presidential candidates involved in the crafting of Project 2025, the sole difference this year was that we built a coalition of more than 100 conservative organizations, in addition to publishing everything online. So there would be nothing in the shadows, nothing done that wasn't immediately examinable by anyone who found the project at project2025.org. I encourage your viewers and listeners to visit that and do a word search, do a category search. It is a long document, but that's because it utilizes more than 400 experts in areas from economic policy to national defense to education, and really presents what we believe as a coalition of conservatives is the best vision for a free, prosperous, safe, and flourishing America.
I read a quote from you at Milwaukee where you were speaking at an event where you said the primary responsibility, I think, of the next administration is to make sure that they don't sacrifice children on the altar of woke progressivism. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think we are now seeing in public education more of an effort to indoctrinate than we are to educate. Our math and reading literacy scores are at 30%. We actually find ourselves in the middle of the pack of most developed nations in the world in terms of our ability to produce young, educated minds for math and literacy specifically. We have more work to do when it comes to getting back to basics in the entire elimination of DEI and inclusion and what we're seeing now, which is a trend of illustrated porn in school libraries. And the Supreme Court's very clear about where First Amendment protections are, but it is also very clear about the lacking maturity and the lack of emotional capacity of children, and that there are some things that they should not be subject to and that schools can restrict from being involved with. And so our perspective there is that education should focus on education. It shouldn't focus on ideals that are those of one political party over another or pet projects of the teachers' unions. And we know that both the AFT and the NEA have been very involved in American education in the last 4 years.
What would you like to see the first priorities of a Trump administration be, knowing that we don't know what the control of Congress or it might be, but what he could do as president? What do you think he needs to focus on first?
Well, I think the first thing he needs to do is ensure the fact that there is much rulemaking to be done and revoke the informal guidance that we've seen interpreting many provisions of federal law, whether they are in the anti-discrimination field and medical services or the anti-discrimination field and educational services. He's taken liberties with a certain amount of legal interpretation. He's lost multiple times as far as the Title IX rewrite is concerned, and Title IX, the Education Amendments of 1972, obviously a hallmark of the women's liberation movement, guaranteed sex equality in education for 52 years. Now, obviously, subject to a brand new rule that will be enforced as of August 1st, expanding the definition of sex to include gender identity or gender expression, something not only not supported by Supreme Court law, but something actually that flies in the face of what the entire purpose and mission was of Title IX in the first place. So he's got a lot of work to do. I think the first is to begin the rulemaking process, revoke the informal guidance that informed many of those expansive policies in the administrative state. And we've recently seen from the Supreme Court that they have no tolerance for an expansion of what we've called the fourth branch of government, and that is the administrative state. There are three branches. They ought to be separated, and it is not for the executive to make law.
All right, Sarah Parshall-Perry from the Heritage Foundation, thank you so much for your time. We're going to go back to the convention floor where Donald Trump's son, Eric, is speaking to delegates.
Unlike his predecessor, it was not a decision born out of necessity. Unlike the current president, it was not a decision that would enrich his family. Rather, it was a decision made out of love for this country and a deep concern for America's future. My father was clear it would not be easy, that there would be a huge price to pay, and that the attacks would be vicious. Looking back, that was an understatement. The made-up Russia hoax, the sham impeachments, the efforts to destroy an unbelievable company, a company that I run today, the efforts to cancel us, to silence him, to gag his free speech, and to drag him through every radical left courthouse in America, to take his life. Yet through it all, he's shown unwavering courage and determination, not just in public, but in every private conversation with me and our family. He stood tall, fueled not by personal ambition, but by a profound love for this country and a love for all of you, the American people. That man is my father. That man is the 45th president and soon to be 47th president of the United States. That man is Donald J. Trump. Each time I've stood on this stage, America has been at a dire crossroads. In 2016, many people began to doubt the promise of America. Our economy was struggling. Jobs were scarce. Our standing on the world stage was weak at best. Veterans were forgotten. Our military was in shambles. Our educational system was broken, ranked 30th in the world. He could no longer tolerate an inept administration that handed $150 billion to Iran, a country that chants death to America, or witness the continued attacks on our Constitution and our religious liberty, or see the disrespect shown to our unbelievable law enforcement officers who are being disarmed, defunded, and persecuted each and every day. He could no longer stand to see words like Christmas stripped from public use or the Pledge of Allegiance removed from our schools. But my father saw potential where others saw despair. Donald Trump built the New York City skyline. He did so during a time when businesses were turning away from the city he loved. Crime was rampant. The streets were dirty. But he had the Midas touch, and he turned those streets and neighborhoods into gold. He faced every challenge with tremendous vision and grit. As he did during the 2016 election, he rolled up his sleeves. He remained unapologetic. He did not care to be politically correct. He restored hope. He restored a voice to millions of Americans who had been ignored. He restored the American dream. Under my father's leadership, the economy climbed to record heights. Jobs were created at an unthinkable pace. Unemployment reached historic lows across all demographics. Wage growth soared. He cut taxes for hardworking families and businesses. He slashed regulations. We saw the greatest 401k increase in American history. People bought their first homes in an environment that saw 2 to 3% interest rates. They started their families. My father made the United States energy independent with the lowest gas prices in decades. My father made the United States safe. Our borders were closed. There was peace in the Middle East. Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, the terrorists were dead. My father made the United States respected again, with the courage to walk into countries like North Korea, with the courage to impose tariffs on China, and with the courage to tear up trade deals that cost Americans their jobs. He brought manufacturing back to America. Small businesses flourished. He did what he promised. He put America first. We were winning. Donald Trump made America great again. but he also created a movement that threatened the special interests in the political elites, a movement that cast a bright light on the institutions weaponized against the American people. You see it in our schools. God bless the moms who fought back. You see it in your workplace. You see it on every news station, in every newspaper. You see it in the military. The most iconic military installations on planet Earth are stripped of their identity and renamed. Fort Bragg, Benning, Fort Hood. You see it in Hollywood. You see it in our two-tier judicial system. They don't even hide it anymore. My father has been censored. The former president ripped off to Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook while terrorist organizations remain intact. My father has been persecuted, targeted by far-left Democrats funded by special interest groups and hand-picked judges. My father has been pulled off the ballots of states, radical justices attempting to defy the will of millions of Americans who adore who he is and what he stands for. My father even became the target of an assassin who almost killed America's single greatest hope for our future. The swamp is terrified of this incredible movement. They're terrified of it. They're terrified of you and the tens of millions of people watching us on TV right now. They've tried everything to keep him from you, everything, to destroy his legacy, to destroy his family. They have failed, and they will not win. I love my Florida delegation right here. Thank you. My father stands before you with the most votes of any Republican candidate in the history of our nation. He has defied the predictions of every political pundit. He fills stadiums across our country. He energizes Americans to the issues facing this nation and does so with unvarnished honesty. He is not a threat to democracy. He is a threat to those who despise our republic, many whom are bought and sold, bribed and coerced, people who have never signed the front of a check and who have been dependent on the government their entire adult lives. Today, as it was in 2016, America is at that crossroads again. Energy prices are soaring. Interest rates are crippling. Everything is unaffordable. The U.S. dollar has been diminished. Inflation has made it impossible for Americans to live, to save for their future. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Our border is out of control. Millions are dead and displaced in Russia and Ukraine, a war that has no end and a war that we are funding. The Middle East has become a hornet's nest. Our greatest ally, Israel, totally under siege. Fentanyl is killing our youth and destroying families, while the current administration stands idly by, hoping their inaction will import illegal votes. Crime terrorizes our cities and our suburbs as far-left policies handcuff police. Male athletes, guys my height, 6'5", are swimming in women's sports. Destroying the dreams of young girls who have trained every minute of their lives. We no longer trust our elections. We no longer trust our judicial system. And we no longer believe that our government is working in our best interest. In spite of where we are today as a nation, I'd like to speak to every American. To the homeless veteran sleeping under a bridge as illegal immigrants are housed in the most expensive hotels in New York. I'm sorry. We know it's wrong, and we will fix it. To the single mother who can no longer afford her rent, afford groceries, and has been forced to work 3 jobs, I'm sorry, it does not have to be this way. To the parents who lost a son or daughter to fentanyl, including the incredible woman that spoke the other night, while an administration does absolutely nothing, I'm sorry, your government can do so much better, and it will. To the children who are being brainwashed instead of learning the fundamentals in school, I'm sorry, there are teachers who care, and my father will empower them. To the law enforcement officers, our brave Border Patrol, Secret Service agents who work every single day to protect our communities, knowing damn well that the system will throw you under the bus, I'm sorry, we will stand behind you. To commuters often petrified to take a bus, take a train, or walk the streets in cities across our nation, I'm sorry, that man right there will fix this. To the construction workers, to the middle-class families, to the families with children with disabilities, families who can no longer afford medical benefits or to take a vacation, I'm sorry, we will make America great again. And to my father, who has been ruthlessly silenced, slandered, and attacked by a corrupt administration, I'm sorry. We know, and America knows, that they're not just after you, they're after all of us, and you just happen to be standing in their way. To all Americans watching tonight, the greatest retribution will be our success. Success not just for ourselves, but for our grandchildren and our children. Under President Donald J. Trump, the swamp will be drained. America will be respected. Our cities will be safe. Our streets will be clean. And our border will once again be secure. We will have peace. We will have prosperity. Your hard-earned tax dollars will enrich a better America, not be squandered in corrupt foreign nations. Education will be handed back to the states. We will no longer be 30th in the world. We will be first.
You're listening to live special coverage of the Republican National Convention. This is Eric Trump addressing the delegates.
Our children will understand family, our children will have values, and our children will love God. Our country will prioritize free speech, respect freedom of religion, and honor our Constitution. As his son, I've never been more proud of a person in my life. A man who has defied all odds more than once. A man who believed in the promise of America when others turned away. A man who saw a nation in need of a champion and answered that call with unwavering determination and courage. A man who survived a bullet that was intended to eliminate him permanently from our future and from our family. Never have I been more proud to be a Trump. Never have I been more proud to stand by my father's side. I remain incredibly honored to be part of this journey, a journey with all of you, a journey to save the greatest country on earth, a journey with the most incredible people I have ever met. Dad, 5 days ago, Laura, Luke, Carolina, and I held our breath as we saw blood pour across your face. By the grace of God, divine intervention, and your guardian angels above, you survived. You are the greatest fighter I have ever seen. You are strong, you are full of life, and you are unapologetic. Your optimism is contagious. Your backbone is unbreakable. Your conviction to fight for what is right and against all that is wrong is truly next level. The whole world saw your strength as you stood up. You wiped the blood off your face, and you put your fist in the air in a moment that will be remembered as one of the most courageous acts in the history of American politics. You shouted, "Fight! Fight! Fight!" I'm honored to be your son. I'm honored to speak to our great nation tonight. You are a true leader. You epitomize strength. Our country loves you. Our country appreciates you. Our country misses you. And on November 5th, our country will re-elect you as the 47th President of the United States of America. Good night, Milwaukee.
That is Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son, addressing the delegates at the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're going to go to the NPR booth in the Fiserv Forum where Mara Liasson and Franco Ordonez have been listening to the speech. And Franco, I'll start with you. That was a pretty stark speech from Eric Trump. Many dark lines in there. One that really stuck out to me was talking about his father, where he said, "Trump is not a threat to democracy. He is a threat to those who hate our republic."
Yeah, I mean, it's a theme that, Trump himself has raised a lot. It's kind of that feng shui, you might say, that the campaign has used to kind of try to turn a campaign point that the Biden campaign has been using against Trump. That Trump and the Trump, a second Trump administration would be a danger to America. They point to some of the efforts to weaponize the government. Trump has very clearly said that he wants to go after his adversaries, political adversaries. He's used other types of autocratic language. Eric Trump was very stark on those levels. I mean, we've talked about like a unity message, and while he did seek to humanize his father a bit, those I thought were some of the strongest, starkest language I've heard so far.
Franco, I also want to ask you, I want to step back a minute, because prior to this speech, we did interview someone from the Heritage Foundation who was involved in Project 2025. And I know that that is something that you have reported on. Could you put in context, especially in political context, what this document is and what it means at this point in the campaign? Yeah, of course. Project 2025 is essentially a 900-page plan that kind of is a roadmap to rework
the U.S. government, transform the government. What the Heritage Plan is basically a document that kind of executes many of Trump's goals and wishes. And it starts with one of his key ones, which is demolishing the deep state, kind of putting into work the legal framework to get rid of many federal workers and replace them with loyalists. Politically, it has become extremely controversial. For that reason, as well as others, as I said, it's a 900-page document that has a lot in there. And some of this stuff in there, such as about abortion, some very strong language about restrictions, that has kind of alerted Democrats, independents, and raised concerns that this could be a plan that Trump would use that would go very far. Now, recently, in the last few weeks, Trump has tried to really distance himself from this plan, distance himself from Project 2025, as well as the Heritage Foundation. But this plan was written largely by former Trump administration officials as well as allies. Dozens and dozens of people who have been involved with the Trump administration were part of this plan, either as authors and or advisors. And, you know, this is true, that this is not Trump's plan per se. Trump can pick and choose what he wants, but it was absolutely written for Trump with him in mind. And also these same individuals, people like Russ Vought, who led Trump's Office of Management and Budget, John McEntee, who was the personnel lead at the White House during the first Trump administration, very involved with Project 2025. These kind of individuals are very likely to be part of a second administration if Trump were to win again.
Franco, we should note that there is Beethoven music now playing in the convention hall, and we are anticipating an appearance from Melania Trump. It is notable that she is not speaking here this evening, though.
Yeah, I mean, Melania has never been a fan of, the attention that a, traditional first wife would get. She has always have been more focused on, being a parent, protecting Barron Trump, her son, Trump's son. Even during the Trump administration, Melania was rarely seen. Many of her statements, her loudest statements, were some of the clothes that she wore, like the writing on some of the jackets when there was controversy about the border. And during this campaign, we have not heard from her barely at all. It was only a few weeks ago that we got one of her most lengthy statements, which was, this week after the shooting. Melania Trump wrote that this shooter was trying to turn Trump into a political machine, that he was trying to rip out, kind of wring out was her words, the humanity of Trump, his love of music, his life, all the artistic passions that he has. It was a very touching, statement from the First Lady, especially Melania Trump, who we don't usually hear from.
Franco, stay with me. I just want to take a moment to explain what's happening right now. Melania Trump has been seen entering the convention hall. She is wearing a red skirt suit, waving to supporters, obviously getting a very, very warm response. She is not expected to speak, but I will say if she does, we will carry it. She's only supposed to sort of wave and address the delegates. Usually, the First Lady will introduce her husband. She will not be doing that. But she is joining her husband in the presidential box where he had been seated next to his running mate, J.D. Vance, and his wife, Usha Vance. And it does not appear that she will speak. She's just joining along with her family now. Franco, let's go. Franco, we're going to go back into the booth with Mara Liasson. And Mara, I was really struck by the split screen in politics that's happening right now between the Republican Party, which was just unanimously roaring and yelling fight at the end of Eric Trump's speech, and the contrast to what's happening in the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot exaggerate the contrast. You've got a demoralized, terrified party who very much, from voters to top elected officials, want their standard bearer to put down the standard and step aside. And then you've got this incredible 100% unified Republican convention feeling extremely confident about their chances in November. I think to say that they think they have it in the bag is not an exaggeration. But things are happening on the Democratic side. I was told by one person very close to top House leadership that the president knows he is frail. And it sounds like, things are happening. Things are even changing in President Biden's mind.
I wanted to bring in Ron Elving, who's been in studio with me, because I love to get the perspective of both you and Mara on these moments. Because, Ron, it feels like we are living a scenario that there's no analogy for. We've never been here before, have we?
Almost never. Let's just say it was 1892 that you had the out party actually chanting 4 more years, and figuratively speaking, of course. But when Grover Cleveland was seeking another term, his party, which was no longer in the White House, was trying to get him back into the White House, and they were in the position the Republicans are now. But that's a long, long time ago, and really in another era with politics that really are not comparable to the politics we have today. Women could not vote. It was just a totally different time in our history. So this is a convention and a situation which really sprang from June 27th and July 13th. First, obviously, the debate in Biden's incredibly disappointing performance that even his own people and he himself had to pan, and which was disturbing, of course, to Democrats across the board. And then, in so far as that was in any sense recovered from, and it probably wasn't recovered from, on July 13th, everything changed again because of the shots fired at the Butler, Pennsylvania rally, and, of course, the grazing of the president. It was inches away from being an assassination, clearly. And that's deeply disturbing to people who remember the assassinations of past years, the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan in 1981. That set the tone, really, for the first year of Ronald Reagan's time in the presidency, and really for the whole first term, was that assassination attempt and the way that he bounced back from it, the courage he showed. Obviously, that's the model for what Donald Trump is doing now. And that's even without referencing the assassinations that happened in which death took the president. And this is just the sort of thing that brings all of that back, makes people very emotional, and tends to eliminate the differences between members of a particular party as they rally around their champion.
Mara, it's also that as we sit here tonight, 110 days from Election Day, we cannot say with certainty who the Democratic nominee for president is going to be.
Yeah.
That's an extraordinary reality.
Yeah. And that's an extraordinary reality. And I think Republicans here feel confident they can beat any Democrat on the top of the ticket at this point. But they don't know who it is, and they had planned a whole campaign against Joe Biden, and that's going to have to change if the Democrats do succeed in convincing him that he should take a bow and step aside, which is very possible. You're hearing many more people, Democrats, who think that that could happen very, very soon. And, I think that, Ron talked a lot about history, and I do think that these two conventions represent the history of political parties in America, which is that they're much weaker than they used to be. And in 2016, the Republican Party establishment couldn't stop Donald Trump. Now they've bowed to him and he's remade the party. But in 2024, the Democratic Party establishment can't push their standard bearer off the stage, even though they want to. It's kind of like, where's a smoke-filled room when you need one?
It almost does. It should
they
eliminate.
Just don't exist.
There's a sense of conspiracy around Joe Biden, but I think a lot of Democrats wish there could be more of a conspiracy. They wish there was a smoke-filled room they could all go into and figure this out. And it's all playing out very publicly.
Right.
And there's only one person, as a good reminder, that can ultimately make this decision. And that's Joe
one
Biden.
Person.
Yeah.
That's right. Although there are a lot of Democratic leaders who now have been going to him one after the other, Pelosi, Schumer, Jeffries. We haven't heard about Clyburn yet, to tell him, that they don't think he can win and that he should think about his party and down ballot races. We had another senator today, John Tester, come out publicly. He's now the second senator. Peter Welch of Vermont was the first one to say, I think that Biden should step aside. So there's a lot of momentum on the Democratic side towards getting a new nominee.
Mara, I want to take a pause just for a second, for our listeners. We are watching a video interlude. We are waiting for a speech from Dana White, who's the CEO of Ultimate Fighting Championship, who will introduce Donald Trump in his nomination speech tonight. But we have a few more moments to fill before he begins to speak. So, Mara, the other thing I wanted to ask you, Mara, I don't know if you got to hear Frank Luntz earlier when he was speaking to us, but he did make the point that if Biden gets out, Republicans shouldn't be overconfident with a new Democratic candidate.
That's right.
The ability to shake up this race is unpredictable.
Yep. That's right. It's unpredictable. Never happened before. If the Democrats have a new ticket with younger candidates, who knows what that will do. But I do want to say one thing. All night long we've been looking for signs that there would be a different tone. I just want to say that in the speeches we've heard so far, whether it was Hulk Hogan or Eric Trump, it sounds like the unity they're talking about is unity inside the hall, not some kind of national unity. It was still very much an us versus them message. They're not just after my father, they're after all of us. They persecuted him, they censored him, they pulled him off ballots. So I think we're still not hearing that national unity olive branch message that we were told would happen tonight.
Among other things, Eric Trump used the word retribution and said our retribution will be when Donald J. Trump returns to the White House. There was quite a bit of signaling, I would say, telegraphing of the next punch that would come from the Republican Party to get even, if you will, or to get beyond even for what they see as the abuses of Donald Trump by the Democrats.
Franco, if you're still with us, I'd love to go back to you about the Trump family, because one thing is clear is that the president's children remain some of his top political advisors. Certainly in a second term, Don Jr. and Eric Trump seem to be like two people that have his ear. Donald Trump Jr. spoke to one of our own people today, Luke Garrett, and said that he may have used a lot of his political capital to get J.D. Vance on the ticket. So it's clear that in the circle around the president, his children play a pretty big role right now.
Yeah, I think that's no question. I think Don Jr. said he used about every ounce of his political capital to get Vance on the ticket. Yes, I mean, it was like this before in the first administration as well, where it was Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner played a very strong role in the administration, very senior advisor roles. Jared Kushner had was described as kind of like a second Secretary of State.
Are they here tonight?
Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump have shown up today. Okay. So now, also, for this administration, it seems like while Ivanka Trump and Jared have kind of stepped back a little bit, though they are showing up today, Eric and Don Jr., particularly Don Jr., have kind of stepped forward. And you can see it. I felt it certainly in Don Jr.'s speech of the confidence and the role that he played, the willingness to talk to the press, as he did to our producer, Luke Garrett. I mean, this is kind of Trump's MO. He brings those who are most loyal to him around. These are people who have been with him for the longest time, his family, of course. And I certainly expect that to continue. And it certainly seems that Don Jr. is ready for this moment.
Speaking of people loyal to Donald Trump, performing on the stage right now is Kid Rock. I'm going to go to the floor where NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben has had the pleasure of enjoying that musical experience. Danielle, what was the reaction in the room to Eric Trump's speech? It seemed like it really was a red meat speech that got the room really excited for Donald Trump to come out.
Yeah, and tonight has been such a departure in tone, I think, from past nights that I kind of wonder if there was some pent-up desire for a very Trumpy night, and that's what they're getting. I mean, Kid Rock, his songs are part of the Trump rally playlist. This is a familiar sound to a lot of Trump supporters. And yeah, as was a lot of what Eric Trump said, and like Mara Liasson said a little bit earlier, Eric Trump's speech was not aimed at national unity, just party unity.
It's interesting, too, Danielle, because Kid Rock is someone who has a long history of making bigoted remarks or racist remarks. And I think there's an element of MAGA now, too, that they're not really concerned about criticism, about political correctness or about the public appearances. As you said, MAGA on display, they really seem to be sort of leaning in to that cultural embrace that doesn't like sort of liberal criticism of what they do.
Absolutely, and it's not just Kid Rock, it's Franklin Graham, like we said earlier, Tucker Carlson. There's been a number of people who have gotten up to speak or sing who have a history of making, again, controversial isn't quite the word for it. It's bigoted remarks. And I think the way to look at it is it's a feature, not a bug, for a fair number of Trump supporters. It's part of the Trumpy defiance, where the feeling about those sorts of remarks seems to be, oh, you want to criticize me? Well, F you, so to speak. I'm not going to let you criticize me. I'm just going to keep going in my political non-correctness.
And Danielle, we're going to take a pause here because Kid Rock has wrapped up his musical performance and he is introducing Dana White. Dana White is the CEO of Ultimate Fighting Championship, a longtime friend of Donald Trump. He will be introducing the former president this evening to give his acceptance speech. And again, an unusual choice to introduce a presidential candidate. Typically, this role is given to the president's wife, the former first lady. She opted out of that this evening, choosing only to appear and sit in the friends and family box. While we wait, I'm going to try to go back up to our NPR booth to Franco Ordonez and Mara Liasson once again, because Franco, I think you can sort of speak to that Dana White-Donald Trump relationship and how curious and unusual it is that he is the voice that will introduce the nominee.
Yeah, I mean, talk about unity. You know, Mara was talking about the kind of unity this is. This is definitely not the unity that we were kind of anticipated, the warm and fuzzy unity. This is WWE unity. This is bringing in the red meat that this base, his base, really wants.
And he is approaching the stage. This is Dana White, the CEO of Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dana White. I am the CEO and president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So 2 weeks ago, I got a call from President Trump asking me if I'd be willing to speak tonight. As usual, there was no pressure, no demands. He asked me as a friend, and of course I said yes. Then, after I accepted his offer, he sent me a text message, and I just want to read to you a little piece of what President Trump wrote to me. Dana, I'm so honored that you will be doing the introduction at the National Republican Convention. Think of it as the biggest fight you ever had, a fight for our country and even the world. I only wish you didn't have to interrupt your family trip, but I hope they understand they love you and they know how important this is. Now think about this. This man's running for president of the United States. He's fighting for the future of this country, and he's concerned about interrupting my family trip. That's the President Trump that I know. A man who truly cares about people. The mainstream media likes to push the narrative that he doesn't care about anyone but himself. I absolutely know that's not the truth because I've been friends with this guy for 25 years. And for the people who know me, they'll know this is true. I just want to make something very clear. Nobody in the Trump campaign has ever told me what to say. Nobody tells me what to say, and I'm nobody's puppet. And I'm not telling you what to think. I'm telling you what I know. And I know President Trump. I know President Trump is a fighter. I've been saying this since 2015. Now look at what's happened over the last 10 years. We have all seen it with our own eyes. I'm in the tough guy business, and this man is the toughest, most resilient human being that I've ever met in my life. The higher the stakes, the harder he fights, and this guy never, ever gives up. So what's at stake here? The answer is in President Trump's text, and I quote, "A fight for our country." I know why he's running for president again. Why else would he put himself through everything he's dealt with just to get back here? We all know he doesn't need this. This guy's got a great life. He has a beautiful family. and he has achieved everything that you could possibly achieve in life. I know President Trump is literally putting his life on the line for something bigger than himself, and he's willing to risk it all because he loves this country. And I know he wants what's best for the American people, all American people. I know he's running for president to save our American dream. I'm living the American dream, and I know the American dream is very real. Whether you were born in this country or came here from someplace else, this is the last real land of opportunity. President Reagan once said, government's first duty is to protect the people, not run their lives. And if you're buried in government red tape, how will you ever start your own business? If you're struggling to pay your bills, how can you ever afford to start a family? And if you don't feel safe in your own town, why would you ever buy a house? I know that President Trump is fighting to save the American dream, and that's what's at stake in this election. We are choosing who we want to lead us in this fight. I know President Trump is a proven leader, a fearless leader, and this country was in a much better place when he was in the Oval Office. In my mind, the choice is clear. But this election, we all get to choose. I know I'm going to choose strength and security. I know I'm going to choose opportunity and prosperity. I know I'm going to choose real American leadership and a real American badass. And I'm not telling you what choice to make, and I'm not telling you what to think. I'm telling you what I know. I know America needs a strong leader, and the world needs a strong America. I know Donald J. Trump is the best choice for President of the United States. My fellow Americans, it is my honor to introduce the 45th and soon-to-be 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
That is Dana White, the CEO of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, a longtime friend of Donald Trump, introducing the former president as he enters the forum to make his acceptance speech for the presidential nomination for the third time. I believe we have NPR's Mara Eliason and Franco Ordonez up in the NPR booth who are watching the Trump entry. Music selection is always very important to Donald Trump. We should note this is Lee Greenwood. Lee Greenwood. His songbook, a regular feature at Donald Trump rallies. Mara, that had all the feel of a WrestleMania introduction. That was a pretty raucous introduction for Donald Trump.
Yep, right on brand, I think, for Donald Trump. We've heard every possible variation of tough SOB this week. And he was the toughest guy in the world, and he never gives up. And the iconography of the shooting and the fist in the air, that's been described over and over and over again here. So that's the brand of Donald Trump. Now we'll see if he gives a speech against that brand that's not full of red meat and reaching out to unify the country, not just his own party. We'll see.
The Fiserv Forum is now singing along to God Bless the USA.
Led to expect, yeah.
Donald Trump is expected to enter the forum halfway through the song. After singing Lee Greenwood, the stage lights are now lit up.
He's had some pretty amazing entrances. Yeah.
What do you think, Mara? Oh,
remember how he entered with the fog?
Mara,
remember when he entered in 2016 with the fog?
What are you seeing right now, Mara?
He specializes in dramatic. I'm seeing the incredible flashing lights on the stage. Giant Trump sign, kind of like the biggest Hollywood sign you could see, and he's standing in front. This is very similar to 2016 when he was silhouetted. Remember, with the lights behind him, the curtains open, he came out. So it's another dramatic entrance at a Republican convention for Trump.
He also entered center from the stage. There was sort of a grand reveal where he came out and lit up and bright white lights behind him. Spells out Trump.
And he still's got the bandage on his ear in case people can't see it. It's still there.
Mara, I have to. Franco, you're there.
And this looks like the White House. Yeah.
I mean,
looks like they have an image of the White House.
There you go. This image of the White House that just popped up in front of the Trump sign. I mean, this is reminding me of when he returned back from COVID and he walked up the South Portico to that, to the fanfare and the crowd and the lights. And looking back at this crowd and seeing the enthusiasm that they have for him. I mean, he is really soaking this up, and they have really done it up with the spectacle. I can't say that I'm necessarily surprised. This is Trump's brand, and I kind of anticipate this is going to continue. But this crowd is going wild. That is for sure.
The podium and teleprompters also rose up out of the ground. They sort of changed the entire setup of the stage for the president to deliver his speech. He just said thank you to Lee Greenwood. We're anticipating his remarks to begin momentarily. The backdrop has now changed, so it does look like the White House projected behind him with colors of red and blue projected onto it, saying thank you to the crowd. Crowd, obviously, no surprise, shouting USA, USA. This is Donald Trump soon to deliver his third acceptance speech for the Republican presidential nomination. He appeared ready to start speaking, but the crowd is not quieting down. Here we go.
Thank you very, very much. Wow. And thank you, Dana. Thank you, Kid Rock, sometimes referred to as Bob. And thank you, Lee, right from the beginning. Thank you very much. What a talent. What a beautiful, beautiful song. Thank you. Friends, delegates, and fellow citizens, I stand before you this evening with a message of confidence, strength, and hope. 4 months from now, we will have an incredible victory, and we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country. Together, we will launch a new era of safety, prosperity, and freedom for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. The discord and division in our society must be healed. We must heal it quickly. As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we will do it right. We're going to do it right. Let me begin this evening by expressing my gratitude to the American people for your outpouring of love and support following the assassination attempt at my rally on Saturday. As you already know, the assassin's bullet came within a quarter of an inch of taking my life. So many people have asked me, what happened? Tell us what happened, please. And therefore, I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell. It was a warm, beautiful day in the early evening in Butler Township in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Music was loudly playing, and the campaign was doing really well. I went to the stage, and the crowd was cheering wildly. Everybody was happy. I began speaking very strongly, powerfully, and happily, because I was discussing the great job my administration did on immigration at the southern border. We were very proud of it. Behind me and to the right was a large screen that was displaying a chart of border crossings under my leadership. The numbers were absolutely amazing. In order to see the chart, I started to, like this, turn to my right and was ready to begin a little bit further turn, which I'm very lucky I didn't do, when I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard on my right ear. I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet. And moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down. My hand was covered with blood, just absolutely blood all over the place. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack, and in one movement proceeded to drop to the ground. Bullets were continuing to fly as very brave Secret Service agents rushed to the stage, and they really did. They rushed to the stage. These are great people at great risk, I will tell you, and pounced on top of me so that I would be protected. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together. The most incredible aspect of what took place on that terrible evening in the fading sun was actually seen later. In almost all cases, as you probably know, and when even a single bullet is fired, just a single bullet, and we had many bullets that were being fired, crowds run for the exits or stampede, but not in this case. It's very unusual. This massive crowd of tens of thousands of people stood by and didn't move an inch. In fact, many of them bravely but automatically stood up looking for where the sniper would be. They knew immediately it was a sniper, and then began pointing at him. You can see that if you look at the group behind me. That was just a small group compared to what was in front. Nobody ran, and by not stampeding, many lives were saved. But that isn't the reason that they didn't move. The reason is that they knew I was in very serious trouble. They saw it. They saw me go down. They saw the blood and thought, actually most did, that I was dead. They knew it was a shot to the head. They saw the blood. And there's an interesting statistic. The ears are the bloodiest part. If something happens with the ears, they bleed more than any other part of the body. For whatever reason, the doctors told me that. And I said, why is there so much blood? He said, it's the years. They bleed more. So we learned something, but they just, this beautiful crowd, they didn't want to leave me. They knew I was in trouble. They didn't want to leave me. And you can see that love written all over their faces. They're incredible people. They're incredible people. Bullets were flying over us, yet I felt serene. But now the Secret Service agents were putting themselves in peril. They were in very dangerous territory. Bullets were flying right over them, missing them by a very small amount of inches. And then it all stopped. Our Secret Service sniper, from a much greater distance and with only one bullet used, took the assassin's life, took him out. I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here. No. Thank you. But I'm not. And I'll tell you, I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God. In watching the reports over the last few days, many people say it was a providential moment. Probably was. When I rose surrounded by Secret Service, the crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great, great sorrow. I could see that on their faces as I looked out. They didn't know I was looking out. They thought it was over. But I could see it, and I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." Thank you. Once my clenched fist went up, and it was high into the air. You've all seen that. The crowd realized I was okay and roared with pride for our country like no crowd I have ever heard before. Never heard anything like it. For the rest of my life, I will be grateful for the love shown by that giant audience of patriots that stood bravely on that fateful evening in Pennsylvania. Tragically, the shooter claimed the life of one of our fellow Americans, Corey Comparator. Unbelievable person, everybody tells me. Unbelievable. And seriously wounded, two other great warriors. Spoke to them today. David Dutch and James Copenhaver. Two great people. I also spoke to all three families of these tremendous people. Our love and prayers are with them, and always will be. We're never going to forget them. They came for a great rally. They were serious Trumpsters, I want to tell you. They were serious Trumpsters, and still are. But Corey, unfortunately, we have to use the past tense. He was incredible. He was a highly respected former fire chief, respected by everybody. Was accompanied by his wife, Helen, incredible woman. I spoke to her today, devastated, and two precious daughters. He lost his life selflessly acting as a human shield to protect them from flying bullets. He went right over the top of them and was hit. What a fine man he was.
This is President Trump giving his acceptance speech. He's taken a moment to pause and walk towards what appears to be on stage, the fire uniform of the gentleman that was killed at the campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, Corey Compatare. Trump has spoken extensively about him in his acceptance speech tonight. He is returning to the microphone.
I want to thank the fire department and the family for sending his helmet, his outfit, and it was just something, and they're going to do something very special when they get it. But we did something which cannot match what happened, not even close. But I am very proud to say that over the past few days, we've raised $6.3 million for the families of David, James, and Corey, including from a friend of mine just called up. He sent me a check right here. I just got it. $1 million from Dan Newland. Thank you, Dan. And again, when speaking to the family, I told them, I said, well, I'm going to be sending you a lot of money, but it can't compensate. They all said the same thing. You're right, sir. We appreciate so much what you're doing, but nothing can take the place in the case of Corey and the other two. By the way, they were very, very seriously injured, but now they're doing very well. They're going to be okay. They're going to be doing very well. They're warriors. So now I ask that we observe a moment of silence in honor of our friend Corey.
This is the RNC giving a moment of silence to
There is no greater
the
love
firefighter who was
than
killed
to
at the
lay
campaign
down
rally.
one's life for others. This is the spirit that forged America in her darkest hours, and this is the love that will lead America back to the summit of human achievement and greatness. This is what we need. Despite such a heinous attack, we unite this evening more determined than ever. I am more determined than ever, and so are you. So is everybody in this room. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our resolve is unbroken and our purpose is unchanged to deliver a government that serves the American people better than ever before. Nothing will stop me in this mission because our vision is righteous and our cause is pure. No matter what obstacle comes our way, we will not break, we will not bend, we will not back down, and I will never stop fighting for you, your family, and our magnificent country. Never. And everything I have to give with all of the energy and fight in my heart and soul, I pledge to our nation tonight. Thank you very much. I pledge that to our nation. I'm going to turn our nation around, and we're going to do it very quickly. Thank you. This election should be about the issues facing our country and how to make America successful, safe, free, and great again. In an age when our politics too often divide us, now is the time to remember that we are all fellow citizens. We are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we must not criminalize dissent or demonize political disagreement, which is what's been happening in our country lately at a level that nobody has ever seen before. In that spirit, the Democrat Party should immediately stop weaponizing the justice system and labeling their political opponent as an enemy of democracy. Especially since that is not true. In fact, I am the one saving democracy for the people of our country. And very big news, as you probably just read. On Monday, a major ruling was handed down from a highly respected federal judge in Florida, Eileen Cannon, finding that the prosecutor and the fake documents case against me were totally unconstitutional, and the entire case was thrown out of court. With all of that publicity, thrown out of court. If Democrats want to unify our country, they should drop these partisan witch hunts, which I have been going through for approximately 8 years. And they should do that without delay and allow an election to proceed that is worthy of our people. We're going to win it anyway, but worthy of our people. On this journey, I am deeply honored to be joined by my amazing wife, Melania. And Melania, thank you very much. You also did something really beautiful, a letter to America calling for national unity, and it really took the Republican Party by surprise. I will tell you, it was beautiful. In fact, some very serious people said that we should take that letter and put it as part of the Republican platform. That would be an honor, wouldn't it? Right, Mr. Congressman? But it captivated so many, so I also want to thank my entire family for being here. Don, Kimberly, Ivanka and Jared, Eric and Lara, Tiffany and Michael, Barron. We love our Barron. And of course, my 10 wonderful grandchildren. You saw a few of them up there on my lap before. And how good was Dana? Was Dana good? I mean, was he good? You know, he was on probably the only vacation he's had in about, maybe ever, because he works, but about 10 years with his wife, very far away. I won't tell you where, but very, very far away, beautiful place. And my people called, and he said, yeah, I won't be able to do it. This is many, many years. I promised my wife I can't do it. And they came in, they said, Dana won't be able to do it, because he was my first, second, and third choice. I said, well, you know, that's too bad, but I understand he's away, and it's good. It's good for him. And that was it. About 30 minutes later, she came back in, sir, Dana just called. He's going to do it. And his wife, she said, you can't turn him down. You just can't do it. You have to go. That's a good wife. So he got on a plane. He got here a little while ago. Now he's going to get on the plane in a little while, and he's going to go back home to his wife. But they're great, and I just want to thank her and him and their whole family, because that's not easy. And Kid Rock, same thing. Called, he said, I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part, because, you know, Kid does his great song, Big, Big Monster song. I had no idea. You know, he became a friend of mine over the last 10 years. and he's amazing. Everyone loves him. I didn't even know how big he was. You know, he has rallies, 35, 40,000 people he gets every time he goes out. I think he's making so much money, he doesn't know what the hell to do with it. You want to know? And then we have my other friend, and I've known him so long, and we took that song, and it was a big success, but we made that. I saw a chart of great songs to America. That was #1 on the chart recently, #1. So that's Lee Greenwood, a very special, beautiful person. He's a beautiful man. But they all wanted to be here. They called. And how about the Hulkster? How good was he? Is he up? Where is he? Boy, oh boy. You know, they may call that entertainment. I know about entertainment, but when he used to lift a 350-pound man over his shoulders and then bench press him 2 rows into the audience, I said, maybe entertainment, but he is one strong son of a gun. I will tell you, I watched it many times. There aren't a lot of entertainers that can do that, right? You were fantastic. Thank you very much. Followed by Eric. What was that all about? Boy, that was good. I didn't want to really come up here. But he was so great, and he's such a good young man. He went through a lot of trouble, and Don last night was incredible. They went through so much trouble. They got subpoenaed more than any people probably in the history of the United States. Every week they get another subpoena from the Democrats, crazy Nancy Pelosi, the whole thing, just boom, boom, boom. They've got to stop that because they're destroying our country. We have to work on making America great again, not on beating people. And we won. We beat them and all. We beat them on the impeachments. We beat them on indictments. We beat them. But the time that you have to spend, if they would devote that genius to helping our country, we'd have a much stronger and better country. And Jason, the biggest star in country music. Jason, thank you for being here. Jason, thank you very much. Jason Aldean, he's good. I like his wife even better, by the way. She's here. Thank you, Jason. But I'm thrilled to have a new friend and partner fighting by my side. The next Vice President of the United States, the current Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, and his incredible wife, Usha. He's going to be a great Vice President. He's going to be great. He'll be with this country and with this movement, greatest movement in the history of our country, Make America Great Again. When they criticize it, they say, we're going to try and stop MAGA. I said, MAGA is Make America Great Again. What are you going to stop? There's nothing to stop.
You're listening to live special coverage of the Republican
Then
National
say,
Convention.
that's right.
Here is
It's very
Donald
tough
Trump
to fight it.
giving his acceptance speech.
And all of the people that did try and fight it have failed. But he's going to be with us for a long time, and it was an honor to select him. Great, great student at Yale. His wife was a great student at Yale. They met at Yale. These are two smart people. So, J.D., you're going to be doing this for a long time. Enjoy the ride. And a very special thank you to the extraordinary people of Milwaukee and the great state of... Oh, there they are. There they are. You are so easy to spot. And Green Bay's going to have a good team this year, right? They're going to have a good team. They're going to have a good team. Most of the audience doesn't like it, but it's true. You're going to have a very good team this year. And by the way, Wisconsin, we are spending over $250 million here, creating jobs and other economic development all over the place. So I hope you will remember this in November and give us your vote. I am trying to buy your vote. I'll be honest about that. And I promise we will make Wisconsin great again. We're going to make it. Thank you, Mr. Governor. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm here tonight to lay out a vision for the whole nation, to every citizen, whether you're a young or old man or woman, Democrat, Republican, or independent, black or white, Asian or Hispanic. I extend to you a hand of loyalty and of friendship. Together we will lead America to new heights of greatness like the world has never seen before. We were right there in the first term. We got hit with COVID. We did a great job. Nobody knew what it was, but nobody's ever seen an economy pre-COVID. And then we handed over a stock market that was substantially higher than just prior to COVID. Coming in, did a great job. Never got credit for that. We got credit for the war and defeating ISIS and so many things, the great economy, the biggest tax cuts ever, the biggest regulation cuts ever, the creation of Space Force, the rebuilding of our military. We did so much. We did so much. Right to try. Right to try is a big deal. We got right to try. They were trying to get that for 52 years. Somebody's terminally ill. And hopefully there's nobody in this audience, but it does happen a lot. They're terminally ill and they can't use our new space-age drugs and other things that we are way ahead. We have the greatest doctors in the world, the greatest laboratories in the world, and you can't do it. They've been trying to get that approved for 52 years. Wasn't that easy? The insurance companies didn't want to do it. They didn't want the risk. The labs didn't want to do it because if it didn't work, people are pretty far down the line toward death. They didn't want to do it. The doctors didn't want to have it on their records, so I got everybody into an office. 52 years they tried. Sounds simple, but it's not. And I got them to agree that somebody that needs it will, instead of going to Asia, Europe, or someplace, or if you have no money going home and dying, just die. We got them to sign an agreement, agree to it, where they're not going to sue anybody. They're going to get all of this stuff. They're going to get it really fast. And what's happened is we're saving thousands and thousands of lives. It's incredible. Right to try. It's a great feeling. Under our leadership, the United States will be respected again. No nation will question our power. No enemy will doubt our might. Our borders will be totally secure. Our economy will soar. We will return law and order to our streets, patriotism to our schools, and importantly, we will restore peace, stability, and harmony all throughout the world. But to achieve this future, we must first rescue our nation from failed and even incompetent leadership. We have totally incompetent leadership. This will be the most important election in the history of our country. Under the current administration, we are indeed a nation in decline. We have an inflation crisis that is making life unaffordable, ravaging the incomes of working and low-income families, and crushing, just simply crushing our people like never before. They've never seen anything like it. We also have an illegal immigration crisis, and it's taking place right now as we sit here in this beautiful arena. It's a massive invasion at our southern border that has spread misery, crime, poverty, disease, and destruction to communities all across our land. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Then there's an international crisis, the likes of which the world has seldom been part of. Nobody can believe what's happening. War is now raging in Europe and the Middle East. A growing specter of conflict hangs over Taiwan, Korea, the Philippines, and all of Asia. And our planet is teetering on the edge of World War III. And this will be a war like no other war because of weaponry. The weapons are no longer army tanks going back and forth shooting at each other. These weapons are obliteration. It's time for a change. This administration can't come close to solving the problems. We're dealing with very tough, very fierce people. They're fierce people. And we don't have fierce people. We have people that are a lot less than fierce, except when it comes to cheating on elections and a couple of other things. Then they're fierce. Then they're fierce. So tonight, I make this pledge to the great people of America. I will end the devastating inflation crisis immediately, bring down interest rates, and lower the cost of energy. We will drill, baby, drill. Can you believe what they're doing? But by doing that, we will lead a large-scale decline in prices. Prices will start to come down. Energy raised it. They took our energy policies and destroyed them. Then they immediately went back to them, but by that time, so much was lost. But we will do it at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And we'll end lots of different things. We'll start paying off debt and start lowering taxes even further. We gave you the largest tax cut. We'll do it more. You know, people don't realize I brought taxes way down, way down, and yet we took in more revenues the following year than we did when the tax rate was much higher. Most people said, how did you do that? Because it was incentive. Everybody was coming to the country. They were bringing back billions and billions of dollars into our country. The companies made it impossible to bring it back. The tax rate was too high, and the legal complications were far too great. I changed both of them, and hundreds of billions of dollars by Apple and so many other companies were brought back into our nation, and we had an economy the likes of which no nation had ever seen. China, we were beating them at levels that were incredible. And they know it. They know it. We'll do it again, but we'll do it even better. I will end the illegal immigration crisis by closing our border and finishing the wall, most of which I've already built. On the wall, we were dealing with a very difficult Congress. And I said, oh, that's okay. We won't go to Congress. I call it an invasion. We gave our military almost $800 billion. I said, I'm going to take a little of that money because this is an invasion. And we built, most of the wall is already built. And we built it through using the funds because what's better than that? We have to stop the invasion into our country that's killing hundreds of thousands of people a year. We're not going to let that happen. I will end every single international crisis that the current administration has created, including the horrible war with Russia and Ukraine, which would have never happened if I was president, and the war caused by the attack on Israel, which would have never happened if I was president. Iran was broke. Iran had no money. Now Iran has $250 billion. They made it all over the last 2.5 years. They were broke. I watched the other day on a show called Deface the Nation. Has anyone seen it? And they had a congressman who was a Democrat say, well, whether you like him or not, Iran was broke dealing with Trump. I told China and other countries, if you buy from Iran, we will not let you do any business in this country, and we will put tariffs on every product you do send in of 100% or more. And they said to me, well, I think that's about it. They weren't going to buy any oil. And they were ready to make a deal. Iran was going to make a deal with us. And then we had that horrible, horrible result that we'll never let happen again. The election result, we're never going to let that happen again. They used COVID to cheat. We're never going to let it happen again. And they took off all the sanctions and they did everything possible for Iran. And now Iran is very close to having a nuclear weapon, which would have never happened. This is a shame what this administration, the damage that this administration has done. And I say it often. If you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of the United States, think of it, the 10 worst, added them up, they will not have done the damage that Biden has done. I'm only going to use the term once. Biden. I'm not going to use the name anymore, just one time. The damage that he's done to this country is unthinkable. It's unthinkable. Together we will restore vision, strength, competence, and we're going to have a thing called common sense making most of our decisions, actually. It's all common sense. Just a few short years ago, under my presidency, we had the most secure border and best economy in the history of our country, in the history of the world. We had the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had never done anything like it. We were beating every country, including China, by leaps and bounds. Nobody had seen anything like it. We had no inflation. Soaring incomes were going. Nobody can believe it. You can't believe what happened 4 years ago is happening now in reverse. And the world was at peace. Inflation has been a killer for our country. No matter what you make it doesn't matter, because inflation is eating you alive. People that were putting away money, they were making great wages, the highest they've ever made, but they were putting away a lot of money. Now they are just being destroyed. They're not putting away anything. They're barely living. They're going into savings accounts. They're taking out their money to live because of inflation. Inflation, remember, it's called a country buster. You can go back to Germany from 100 years ago. You can go back to any country that suffered great inflation. We've suffered the worst inflation we've ever had. But go back and see what's happened to those countries. We've had the worst inflation we've ever had under this person. But in less than 4 years, our opponents have turned incredible success into unparalleled tragedy and failure. It's been a tremendous failure. Today, our cities are flooded with illegal aliens. Americans are being squeezed out of the labor force and their jobs are taken. And by the way, you know who's taking the jobs that are created? 107% of those jobs are taken by illegal aliens. And you know who's being hurt the most by millions of people pouring into our country? The black population and the Hispanic population, because they're taking the jobs from our black population, our Hispanic population, and they're also taking them from unions. The unions are suffering because of it. Thank you. Thank you. I like you too. Thank you very much. Inflation has wiped out the life savings of our citizens and forced the middle class into a state of depression and despair. That's what it is. It's despair and depression. We cannot and will not let this continue. Less than 4 years ago, we were a great nation, and we will soon be a great nation again. We're going to be a great nation again. Thank you. With proper leadership, every disaster we are now enduring will be fixed, and it will be fixed very, very quickly. So tonight, whether you've supported me in the past or not, I hope you will support me in the future, because I will bring back the American dream. That's what we're going to do. You don't even hear about the American dream anymore. With great humility, I am asking you to be excited about the future of our country. Be excited. Be excited. And by the way, the news reports, look at all of those big networks. Look at them. They're all here. But every one of them has said this could be the most organized, best run, and most enthusiastic convention of either party that they've ever seen. Every single one. And it's true. It's true. And there's love in the room. There's great love in the room. So I better finish strong. Otherwise, we'll blow it, and we can't let that happen. Now, this was great. All of the great people that spoke, and everybody hit a home run. I mean, there's not one that I can think of where I said, oh, gee, that wasn't great. Every single person. I refuse to be the only one. Don't do that to me. They're already getting ready. See, I gave them an idea. Now, this was a great convention. This was, I think we're actually going to go home and miss it. You know, usually with a first of all, look at these crowds. You'd never have this at a convention. Look at these crowds. Love, it's about love. This week, the entire Republican Party has formally adopted an agenda for America's renewal, and you saw that agenda, and it's very short compared to the long, boring, meaningless agendas of the past, including the Democrats. They write these things that are hundreds of pages long, and they never read them after they're done. In their case, fortunately, they don't read them because they're pretty bad. It's a series of bold promises that we will swiftly implement when you give us a Republican House. And Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. We have our great Speaker of the House with us tonight. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Thank you. A Republican Senate, we have many senators here. And send me back to our beautiful White House just a few short months from now. We're talking about just months. It can't come fast enough. We have to get it done. First, we must get economic relief to our citizens. Starting on day one, we will drive down prices and make America affordable again. We have to make it affordable. It's not affordable. People can't live like this. Under this administration, our current administration, groceries are up 57%, gasoline is up 60 and 70%, mortgage rates have quadrupled. And the fact is, it doesn't matter what they are because you can't get the money anyway. You can't buy houses. Young people can't get any financing to buy a house. The total household costs have increased an average of $28,000 per family under this administration. Republicans have a plan to bring down prices and bring them down very, very rapidly. By slashing energy costs, we will in turn reduce the cost of transportation, manufacturing, and all household goods. So much starts with energy. And remember, we have more liquid gold under our feet than any other country by far. We are a nation that has the opportunity to make an absolute fortune with its energy. We have it, and China doesn't. Under the Trump administration, just 3.5 years ago, we were energy independent. But soon, we will actually be better than that. We will be energy dominant and supply not only ourselves, but we will supply the rest of the world with numbers that nobody has ever seen, and we will reduce our debt, $36 trillion. We will start reducing that, and we will also reduce your taxes still further. Next, and by the way, they want to raise your taxes 4 times, think of it. And all my life, I grew up watching politicians. I always loved politics. I guess I was on the other side. I'd watch and they were always talking about, we will give you a tax cut. We will give you a tax cut. My whole life I was watching, I will give you a tax cut, right, Mr. Congressman? That's all they talked about. This is the only administration that said, we're going to raise your taxes by 4 times what you're paying now, and people are supposed to vote for them? I've never heard it. You're paying too much. We're going to reduce your taxes still further. We gave you the biggest one, as I said. We're going to give you more, and it's going to lead to tremendous growth. We want growth in our country. That's what's going to pay off our debt. And next, we will end the ridiculous and actually incredible waste of taxpayer dollars that is fueling the inflation crisis. They spent trillions of dollars on things having to do with the Green New Scam. It's a scam. And that's caused tremendous inflationary pressures in addition to the cost of energy. And all of the trillions of dollars that are sitting there not yet spent, we will redirect that money for important projects like roads, bridges, dams, and we will not allow it to be spent on meaningless green new scam ideas. And I will end the electric vehicle mandate on day one. Thereby saving the U.S. auto industry from complete obliteration, which is happening right now, and saving U.S. customers thousands and thousands of dollars per car. And right now, as we speak, large factories just started are being built across the border in Mexico. So with all the other things happening on our border, and they're being built by China to make cars and to sell them into our country, no tax, no anything. The United Auto Workers ought to be ashamed for allowing this to happen. And the leader of the United Auto Workers should be fired immediately. And every single auto worker, union and non-union, should be voting for Donald Trump, because we're going to bring back car manufacturing, and we're going to bring it back fast. They're building some of the largest auto plants anywhere in the world. Think of it, in the world. We're going to bring it back. We're going to make them. We don't mind that happening, but those plants are going to be built in the United States, and our people are going to man those plants. And if they don't agree with us, we'll put a tariff of approximately 100 to 200% on each car, and they will be unsellable in the United States. We have long been taken advantage of by other countries. And think of it, oftentimes these other countries are considered so-called allies. They've taken advantage of us for years. We lose jobs, we lose revenue, and they gain everything and wipe out our businesses, wipe out our people. I stopped it for 4 years. I stopped it, and we're really ready to make changes like nobody had seen before. And remember, USMCA, I got rid of NAFTA, the worst trade deal ever made, and replaced it with USMCA, which is, they say, the best trade deal ever made. Actually, probably the best trade deal was the deal I made with China, where they buy $50 billion worth of our product. They were buying nothing. They buy $50 billion worth. They had to. But I don't even talk about it because of COVID. I don't even mention it, frankly, because of what happened with the China virus. We will not let countries come in, take our jobs, and plunder our nation. They come and do that. They plunder our nation. The way they will sell their product in America is to build it in America. Very simple. Build it in America and only in America. And this very simple formula, and Congress has to go along with us, and they will. This very simple formula will create massive numbers of jobs. We will take over the auto industry again, and many, many hundreds of thousands of jobs. We lost so many jobs over the years. If you go back 20, 25 years, they've stolen, going to China and Mexico, about 68% of our auto industry manufacturing jobs. We're going to get them all back. We're going to get them all back, every one of them. At the center of our plan for economic relief are massive tax cuts for workers that include something else that's turned out to be very popular, actually. Here it's very popular, in this building and all those hotels that I saw that are so nice. I'm staying in a nice one. It's called no tax on tips. No tax on tips. No tax on tips. I got that by having dinner recently in Nevada, where we're leading by about 14 points. Hello. I'll see you there very soon, everybody. We're having dinner at a beautiful restaurant in the Trump building on the Strip, and it's a great building, and the waitress comes over. How's everything going? A really nice person. How's everything? Oh, sir, it's so tough. The government's after me all the time on tips, tips, tips. I said, well, they give you cash. Would they be able to find him? She said, actually, and I didn't know this, she said, very little cash is given. It's all put right on the check. And they come in and they take so much of our money, it's just ridiculous, and they don't believe anything we say. And they've just hired, as you know, 88,000 agents to go after them even more. And I said, this shows the level of my, most people go out, they hire consultants, they pay millions of dollars. But I said to her, let me just ask you a question. Would you be happy if you had no tax on tips? She said, what a great idea. I got my information from a very smart waitress. That's better than spending millions of dollars. And everybody loves it. Waitresses and caddies and drivers and everybody's a large group of people that are being really hurt badly. They make money, let them keep their money. I'm going to protect Social Security and Medicare. Democrats are going to destroy Social Security and Medicare because all of these people, by the millions they're coming in, they're going to be on Social Security and Medicare and other things, and you're not able to afford it. They are destroying your Social Security and your Medicare. Under my plan, incomes will skyrocket, inflation will vanish completely, jobs will come roaring back, and the middle class will prosper like never, ever before, and we're going to do it very rapidly. But no hope or dream we have for America can succeed unless we stop the illegal immigrant invasion, the worst that's ever been seen anywhere in the world. There's never been an invasion like this anywhere. Third world countries would fight with sticks and stones not to let this happen. The invasion at our southern border, we will stop it, and we will stop it quickly. You heard Tom Homan yesterday. Tom Homan, put him in charge and just sit back and watch. Brandon Judd of Border Patrol, he's incredible. These guys, they really, their job is a lot easier if they don't have to do anything, but they want to. They're patriots. Brandon Judd, Border Patrol, ICE. ICE goes out. You have to see what ICE does with MS-13. You have these are probably the worst gang, and ICE goes in there. And I know a lot of people in these rows here, and they're very tough people, but they don't want to do this job. They'll go into a pack of MS-13 killers. They're the worst, probably the worst gangs in the world. We have thousands of them. I moved thousands and thousands out in my 4 years. We moved them out, and it was a pleasure. But ICE would go right into a pack of these killers, and you see fists flying, you see everything flying, and then they take them. They put them in a paddy wagon. They take them back, and they get them out of our country. And the other countries weren't accepting them back, and I called up, and I said, tell them that we're not giving them economic aid anymore. And the next day, I got calls from all of these countries that were terminated. Billions of dollars we spend on economic aid to countries that does us, frankly, no good. And the next day, I was called by everybody. I couldn't take all the calls. Sir, what's the problem? I said, you won't take your killers back that you sent in caravans into America. You won't take them back. Well, sir, if you'd like us to, we would give very serious consideration to doing that. And within 24 hours, they were being taken back. For years and years, when I first came in, they said President Obama tried to get him to go back, and they wouldn't accept him. They'd put planes on the runway so you couldn't leave the plane. They'd close the road so you couldn't take the buses. They'd all have to turn back. As soon as I said no more economic aid of any kind to any country that does that, they called back and they said, sir, it would be our great honor to take MS-13. We love them very much. We love them very much, sir. We'll take them back. At the heart of the Republican platform is our pledge to end this border nightmare and fully restore the sacred and sovereign borders of the United States of America, and we're going to do that on day one. That means two things on day one, right? Drill, baby, drill, and close our borders. And by the way, and I think everybody, as a Republican, as a patriot in this room, and most Democrats, we want people to come into our country, but they have to come into our country legally. Legally. Less than 4 years ago, I handed this administration the strongest border in American history. But you can see on the chart that saved my life, that was the chart that saved my life. I said, look it, I'm so proud of it. I think it's one of the greatest. It was done by the Border Patrol, one of the greatest charts I've ever seen. It showed everything just like that. You know the chart. Oh, there it is. That's pretty good. Wow. Last time I put up that chart, I never really got to look at it. But without that chart, I would not be here today. Never got to look at it. I said, you got to see this chart. I was so proud of it, and by the time I got to there, I never got to see it that day. But I'm seeing it now, and I was very proud. And if you look at the arrow in the bottom, that's the lowest level, the one on the bottom, heavy red arrow. That's the lowest level of illegal immigrants ever to come into our country in recorded history, right there. Right there. And that was my last week in office. And then you see what happened after I left. Look at the rest. And if you go out a little bit further, it's getting to be a little bit old, but I love it anyway, right? But you can go much higher with those numbers. Look what happened right after that. The invasion began. We had the opposite. We stopped the invasion. But the invasion that we stopped was peanuts by comparison to what happened after I left. Look at what happened after I left. They took over our country. We ended all catch and release. We shut down asylum fraud. We stopped human trafficking and forged historic agreements to keep illegal aliens on foreign soil. We want them to stay on their soil. Under the Trump administration, if you came in illegally, you were apprehended immediately and you were deported. You went right back. The current administration terminated every single one of those great Trump policies that I put in place to seal the border. I wanted a sealed border. Again, come in, but come in legally. You know how unfair it is? So many people, hundreds of thousands of people, have been working for years to come into our country. And now they see these people pour into our country at levels that are unprecedented. It's so unfair. And we're not going to do it. We're not going to stand for it. They suspended wall construction, ended remain in Mexico. We had a policy, remain in Mexico. You think that was easy to get from the Mexican government? But I said, you must give it to us. If you don't give it to us, there will be repercussions. And they gave it to us, but not easy. Canceled our Safe Third agreements, demolished Title 42, implemented nationwide catch and release. That's catch and release, where we catch them and release them into our country. We catch them and release them into Mexico. There's a slight difference. And took 93, this is the previous administration, 93 executive actions to throw open our border to the world. The entire world is pouring into our country because of this very foolish administration. The greatest invasion in history is taking place right here in our country. They are coming in from every corner of the earth, not just from South America, but from Africa, Asia, the Middle East. They're coming from everywhere. They're coming at levels that we've never seen before. It is an invasion indeed, and this administration does absolutely nothing to stop them. They're coming from prisons. They're coming from jails. They're coming from mental institutions and insane asylums. You know, the press is always on me because I say this. Has anyone seen Silence of the Lambs? The late, great Hannibal Lecter. He'd love to have you for dinner. That's insane asylums. They're emptying out their insane asylums. And terrorists are coming in at numbers that we've never seen before. Bad things are going to happen. Meanwhile, our crime rate is going up, while crime statistics all over the world are going down because they're taking their criminals and they're putting them into our country. A certain country, and I happen to like the president of that country very much, but he's been getting great publicity because he's a wonderful shepherd of the country. He says how well the country's doing because their crime rate is down. And he said he's training all of these rough people. They're rough. He's training them. And I've been reading about this for 2 years. I think, oh, that's wonderful. Let's take a look at it. But then I realized he's not training them. He's sending all of his criminals, his drug dealers, his people that are in jails, he's sending them all to the United States. And he's different in that he doesn't say that. He's trying to convince everybody what a wonderful job he does in running the country. Well, he doesn't do a wonderful job. And by the way, if I ran one of the countries, many countries from all over, I would be worse than any of them. I would have had the place totally emptied out already. But we become a dumping ground for the rest of the world, which is laughing at us. They think we're stupid. And they can't believe that they're getting away with what they're getting away with, but they're not going to be getting away with it for long. That's what I can tell you. In Venezuela, Caracas, high crime. Caracas, Venezuela, really a dangerous place, but not anymore. Because in Venezuela, crime is down 72%. In fact, if they would ever win this election, I hate to even say that, we will have our next Republican convention in Venezuela because it will be safe. Our cities will be so unsafe, we will not be able to have it there. In El Salvador, murders are down by 70%. Why are they down? Now, he would have you convinced that because he's trained murderers to be wonderful people. No. They're down because they're sending their murderers to the United States of America. This is going to be very bad. And bad things are going to happen, and you're seeing it happen all the time. That's why, to keep our families safe, the Republican platform promises to launch the largest deportation operation in the history of our country. Even larger than that of President Dwight D. Eisenhower from many years ago. You know, he was a moderate, but he believed very strongly in borders. He had the largest deportation operation we've ever had. Just recently, I spoke to the grieving mother of Jocelyn Nungary, a wonderful woman, a precious 12-year-old girl from Houston who last month was tied up, assaulted, and strangled to death after walking to the convenience store just a block away from her house. Her body was dumped near the side of the road in a shallow creek, found by some onlookers who couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Charged with Jocelyn's heinous murder are 2 illegal aliens from Venezuela who came across our border, were in custody, and were then released into the country by this horrible, horrible administration that we have right now. I also met recently with the heartbroken mother and sister of Rachel Morin. Rachel was a 37-year-old mom of 5 beautiful children who was brutally raped and murdered while out on a run. She wanted to keep herself in good shape. It was very important to her. She was murdered. The monster responsible first killed another woman in El Salvador before he was led into America by the White House. This White House let them in. He then attacked a 9-year-old girl and her mother in a home invasion in Los Angeles before murdering Rachel in Maryland. Traveled all throughout the country, doing tremendous damage. Rachel's mother will never be the same. I spent time with her. She will never be the same. I've also met with the wonderful family of Laken Riley, the brilliant 22-year-old nursing student. She was so proud of being first in her class, who was out for a jog on the campus of the University of Georgia when she was assaulted, beaten, and horrifically killed. Yet another American life was stolen by a criminal alien set free by this administration. And these were incredible people we're talking about. These were incredible people who died. Tonight, America, this is my vow. I will not let these killers and criminals into our country. I will keep our sons and daughters safe. As we bring security to our streets, we will help bring stability to the world. I was the first president in modern times to start no new wars. You know, we were the toughest. We were the most respected. And you saw this. Hungry, strong country, run by very powerful, tough leaders. Tough guy. Press doesn't like him because he's tough. And he came out recently. They were asking him at an interview, the whole world is exploding. What's happening? What's going on? Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, very tough man. He said, I don't want people coming into my country and blowing up our shopping centers and killing people. But they said to him, tell us what's going wrong, what's happening, what is it? He said, there's only one way you're going to solve it. You got to bring President Trump back to the United States because he kept everybody at bay. He used a word I wouldn't use because I can't use that word. Because you'd say it was braggadocious. The press would say he was a braggart. I'm not a braggart. But Viktor Orban said it. He said Russia was afraid of him. China was afraid of him. Everybody was afraid of him. Nothing was going to happen. The whole world was at peace. And now the world is blowing up around us. All of these things that you read about were not going to happen. Under President Bush, Russia invaded Georgia. Under President Obama, Russia took Crimea. Under the current administration, Russia is after all of Ukraine. Under President Trump, Russia took nothing. We defeated 100% of ISIS in Syria and Iraq, something that was said to take 5 years, sir. It'll take 5 years, sir. We did it in a matter of a couple of months. We have a great military. Our military is not woke. It's just some of the fools on top that are woke. I got along very well. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, I got along very well with him. The press hated when I said that. How could you get along with him? Well, you know, it's nice to get along with somebody who has a lot of nuclear weapons or otherwise, isn't it? See, in the old days, they'd say, that's a wonderful thing. Now they say, how could you possibly do that? But no, I got along with him, and we stopped the missile launches from North Korea. Now North Korea is acting up again, but when we get back, I get along with him. He'd like to see me back, too. I think he misses me, if you want to know the truth. Our opponents inherited a world at peace and turned it into a planet of war. We're in a planet of war. Look at that attack on Israel. Look at what's happening with Ukraine. The cities are just bombed out. How can people live like that where buildings, massive buildings, are falling to the ground? It began to unravel with the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the worst humiliation in the history of our country. We have never had a humiliation like that. 13 heroic U.S. service members were tragically and needlessly killed. 45 others were horrifically wounded. Nobody ever talks about them. No arms, no legs, face explosions, horrifically wounded. And by the way, we have a man in this room who's running for the U.S. Senate from a great state, Nevada, named Sam Brown, who paid the ultimate price. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. He paid the biggest price probably ever paid by anybody that is running for office, and I think he's going to do great. He's running against a person that is not good, not respected, a total lightweight. But Sam, I think, paid, really, we were talking about it with some of the senators that are working so hard for Sam. but he paid the biggest price of any senator ever to run for the Senate. I don't think anybody's ever what he did. He was a real hero, a really great person, and he's running, and I hope that everybody gets out and votes for Sam Brown. And we also left behind $85 billion worth of military equipment, along with many American citizens were left behind. Many, many American citizens, emboldened by that disaster. Russia invaded Ukraine. They saw this group of people that were incompetent. We took the soldiers out first. No, we're going to take the soldiers out second. If they would have followed my plan, we had a great plan. But the plan only kicked in if they did everything perfectly, and they weren't doing things perfectly, so we said it doesn't kick in. 18 months in Afghanistan, we didn't have one, so they were killing them left and right, snipers. And I spoke to the head of the Taliban. You've heard this story. Abdul, still there, still the head of the Taliban. The press got on me. Why would you speak to him? I said, because that's where the killing is. I don't have to speak to somebody that has nothing to do with it. And I told him, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever, ever do that again. You've got to stop. Because during the Obama administration, many great people and soldiers, but a lot of soldiers were being killed from long distance. I said, if you keep doing that, you're going to be hit harder than anybody's ever been hit by a country before. And he said, I understand, Your Excellency. He called me Your Excellency. I wonder if he calls the other guy Your Excellency. I doubt it. The other guy gave him everything. I mean, what kind of a deal was that? He walked out, gave him everything. You know that right now Afghanistan is one of the largest sellers of weapons in the world? They're selling the brand new, beautiful weapons that we gave them. But think of it. He actually said to me, but why do you show me a picture of my home? I said, you'll have to ask your people or one of your wives. But he could figure it out. And for 18 months, we had not one attack on an American soldier by the Taliban. 18 months. And then we had that horrible day where soldiers were killed. I was not there because of a ridiculous election. But we had that horrible attack. And they also gave up Bagram, one of the biggest bases anywhere in the world, air bases anywhere in the world, the longest runways, most powerful, hardened, thickened runways. We gave it up. And I liked it not because of Afghanistan. I liked it because of China. It's 1 hour away from where China makes their nuclear weapons. And you know who has it now? China has it now. We were keeping that. And now China is likewise circling Taiwan, and Russian warships and nuclear submarines are operating 60 miles off the coast in Cuba. Do you know that? No, the press refuses to write about it. If that were me running this country and we had nuclear submarines in Cuba, I will tell you that headlines every day would be, what's wrong with our president? You don't even hear this. You're not hearing about this. Russia has nuclear submarines and warships 60 miles away, Mr. Congressman, from Miami, by the way, happens to be here. Correct? In Cuba. And that would not be stood for if it were somebody else. They don't want to mention it, but now maybe they will. And the entire world, I tell you this, we want our hostages back, and they better be back before I assume office, or you will be paying a very big price. With our victory in November, the years of war, weakness, and chaos will be over. I don't have wars. I had no wars other than ISIS, which I defeated, but that was a war that was started. We had no wars. I could stop wars with a telephone call. I could stop wars with just a telephone call. If properly stated, it would never start. We will replenish our military and build an Iron Dome missile defense system to ensure that no enemy can strike our homeland. And this great Iron Dome will be built entirely in the USA. We're going to build it in the USA. And Wisconsin, just like I gave you that massive ship contract, and you're doing a very nice job, Governor, right? Thank you, Governor. And they're doing a great job. In fact, I had a little design change, and we gave them a tremendous for essentially what we used to call destroyers. These are now the most beautiful. They look like yachts. I said, we have to take the bow, and we have to make it a little nicer and a little point at the top instead of a flat nose. And the people at the shipyard said, this guy sort of knows what he's doing. We have most beautiful ships, right, Governor? And everybody's sitting over there. And it was a big contract that everybody wanted. I gave it to Wisconsin, but we're going to have a lot of that built right here in the state of Wisconsin and all other states. Israel has an Iron Dome. They have a missile defense system. 342 missiles were shot into Israel, and only one got through a little bit. It was badly wounded. It fell to the ground, but most of them are. And Ronald Reagan wanted this many years ago, but we really didn't have the technology many years ago. Remember, they called it Starship, spaceship, anything to mock him. But he was a very good president, very, very good. But now we have unbelievable technology. And why should other countries have this and we don't? No, we're going to build an Iron Dome over our country, and we're going to be sure that nothing can come and harm our people. And again, from an economic development standpoint, we're going to make it all right here. No more sending it out to other countries in order to help. It's America first. America first. We will unleash the power of American innovation. And as we do, we will soon be on the verge of finding the cures to cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and many other diseases. We're going to get to the bottom of it. You remember this gentleman that I don't want to mention other than one time I had to, because when you say the 10 worst, I had to do it. I didn't want anybody to be confused. But this man said, we're going to find the cure to cancer. Nothing happened. We're going to get to the cure for cancer and Alzheimer's and so many other things. We're so close to doing something great. But we need a leader that will let it be done. We will not have men playing in women's sports. That will end immediately. And we will restore and renovate our nation's once great cities, making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. And that includes our nation's capital, which is a horrible killing field. So many things. They leave from Wisconsin, they go to look at the Washington Monument, they end up getting stabbed, killed, or shot. We will be very soon very proud of our capital, again, Washington, D.C. America is on the cusp of a new golden age, but we will have the courage to seize it. We're going to take it. We're going to make it a current. We're going to bring this into a golden age like never seen before. Remember this, China wants to do it. Japan wants to do it. All of these countries want to do it. We have to produce massive amounts of energy if we're going to produce the new. If you look at some of the things that have been done and some of the things that we're going to do, but AI needs literally twice the electricity that's available now in our country. Can you imagine? But instead, we're spending places where they recharge electric cars. They built 8 chargers at a certain location toward the Midwest. 8 chargers for $9 billion. Think of them as a tank for filling up your gas. Think of it. They spent $9 billion on 8 chargers, 3 of which didn't work. And if you were going to do this all over our country, this crazy electric mandate, if you're going to do this and by the way, I'm all for electric. They have their application. But if somebody wants to buy a gas-powered car, gasoline-powered car, or a hybrid, they're going to be able to do it. And we're going to make that change on day one. So to conclude, just a few short days ago, my journey with you nearly ended. We know that. And yet, here we are tonight, all gathered together, talking about the future, promise, and a total renewal of a thing we love very much. It's called America. We live in a world of miracles. None of us knows God's plan or where life's adventure will take us. I want to thank Franklin Graham for being here tonight. He's an outstanding man. He wrote me a note recently. I have a lot of respect for him. Sir, I love your storytelling. I think it's great in front of these big rallies. But, sir, please do me one favor. It won't make any difference. Please don't use any foul language. I was a little embarrassed. He said, it won't make any difference. Actually, it does. The story's not quite as good, but I've been very good. The story is not quite as good, to be honest. I've got to have a little talk with Franklin, but he was great. He's a great gentleman. His father was so incredible, Billy Graham. My father used to love taking me to see Billy Graham. My father would take me to see Billy Graham at Yankee Stadium. He had the biggest rallies you've ever seen. He was a good rally guy, too. But he'd get up, and he was a fantastic guy. My father loved Billy Graham. But I love Franklin Graham. I think Franklin's been fantastic, and I'm working so hard to adhere to his note to me. I'm working hard on it, Franklin. But if the events of last Saturday make anything clear, it is that every single moment we have on earth is a gift from God. We have to make the most of every day for the people and for the country that we love. The attacker in Pennsylvania wanted to stop our movement, but the truth is the movement has never been about me. It has always been about you. It's your movement. It's the biggest movement in the history of our country by far. Can't be stopped. It can't be stopped. It has always been about the hardworking, patriotic citizens of America. For too long, our nation has settled for too little. We settled for too little. We've given everything to other nations, to other people. You have been told to lower your expectations and to accept less for your families. I am here tonight with the opposite message. Your expectations are not big enough. They're not big enough. It is time to start expecting and demanding the best leadership in the world, leadership that is bold, dynamic, relentless, and fearless. We can do that. We are Americans. Ambition is our heritage. Greatness is our birthright. But as long as our energies are spent fighting each other, our destiny will remain out of reach, and that's not acceptable. We must instead take that energy and use it to realize our country's true potential and write our own thrilling chapter of the American story. We can do it together. We will unite. We are going to come together. And success.
You're listening to special
will
coverage
bring
of the
us
Republican
together.
National Convention as Donald Trump closes his acceptance speech.
It is a story of love, sacrifice, and so many other things. And remember the word, devotion. It's unmatched devotion. Our American ancestors crossed the Delaware, survived the icy winter at Valley Forge, and defeated a mighty empire to establish our cherished republic. They fought so hard, they lost so many. They pushed thousands and thousands of miles across a dangerous frontier, taming the wilderness to build a life and a magnificent home for their family. They packed their families into covered wagons, trekked across hazardous trails, scaled towering mountains, and braved rivers and rapids to stake their claim on the wide open, new, and very beautiful frontier. When our way of life was threatened, American patriots marched onto the battlefield, raced into enemy strongholds, and stared down death and stared down those enemies to keep alive the flame of freedom. At Yorktown, Gettysburg, and Midway, they joined the roll call of immortal heroes. So many heroes, so many great, great people. And we have to cherish those people. We can't forget those people. We have to cherish those people. And building monuments to those great people is a good thing, not a bad thing. They saved our country. No challenge was too much. No hardship was too great. No enemy was too fierce. Together, these patriots soldiered on and endured, and they prevailed because they had faith in each other, faith in their country, and above all, they had faith in their God. Just like our ancestors, we must now come together, rise above past differences. Any disagreements have to be put aside and go forward united as one people, one nation, pledging allegiance to one great, beautiful, I think it's so beautiful, American flag. Tonight I ask for your partnership, for your support, and I am humbly asking for your vote. I want your vote. Going to make our country great again. Every day I will strive to honor the trust you have placed in me, and I will never, ever let you down. I promise that. I will never let you down. To all of the forgotten men and women who have been neglected, abandoned, and left behind, you will be forgotten no longer. We will press forward, and together we will win, win, win. Win, 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 win. Nothing will sway us. Nothing will slow us, and no one will ever stop us. No matter what dangers come our way, no matter what obstacles lie in our path, we will keep striving toward our shared and glorious destiny, and we will not fail. We will not fail. Together, we will save this country. We will restore the republic, and we will usher in the rich and wonderful tomorrows that our people so truly deserve. America's future will be bigger, better, bolder, brighter, happier, stronger, freer, greater, and more united than ever before. And quite simply put, we will very quickly make America great again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wisconsin. God bless you. God bless you, Wisconsin, and God bless the United States of America, our great country.
That was
Thank you very
Donald
much,
Trump
everybody.
speaking at the Republican National Convention. You're listening to live special coverage from NPR News. And Donald Trump is now officially the Republican nominee for president. Trump broke the record tonight for the longest nomination acceptance speech in history. That's according to the American Presidency Project at UC Santa Barbara. The previous record, his own. His 2016 speech lasted 1 hour and 14 minutes. Tonight, by the clock here at NPR in Washington, he spoke for about 92 minutes. It started with an emotional recounting of the assassination attempt, and while he promised a more unifying message, in many ways, it was like a classic Trump rally. Danielle Kurtzleben has been watching the speech from the floor of the convention hall. Danielle, you've also attended many of Donald Trump's rallies. I'm not going to ask you to fact-check that entire hour-and-a-half speech, but there were certainly some lines in there that would be worth putting in context.
Yeah, one of the big ones, I think, is that line about undocumented immigrants coming from other countries, from prisons and mental institutions, as Donald Trump likes to say. And it's kind of a bizarre part of his usual speech where he veers into talking about Hannibal Lecter, the character from Silence of the Lambs. Now, I reached out to the Trump campaign a couple of months ago to ask them, what is the basis for that? And they sent me back a bunch of facts and figures about illegal immigration, but none of it had to do with prisons or mental institutions emptying out. So there's a fact check right there. It is unclear where that line comes from or ever came from. There was one more thing that really stuck out to me. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Danielle.
There was one more thing that stuck out to me. There was an economic portion of the speech where Donald Trump blamed Joe Biden for recent high inflation, for high mortgage rates, any number of other recent economic problems. Now, as we have said many times on our air, presidents get too much credit and too much blame for the economy. The president does not have a lever to speed up or slow down the economy. I'm sure they would like one. But that really struck me, to complain about high inflation and high mortgage rates at the same time, because high interest rates are what the Fed uses to try to slow down inflation. So really what Donald Trump was doing was just airing a list of grievances, and the crowd was very receptive to it. But it was a list of grievances that, taken together, didn't entirely make sense.
Danielle, we should also note that he seemed to riff many times. He went off script a lot. It seemed like he was meandering even at certain parts.
Very much, yes. And they just released the balloons down here.
Oh, enjoy that moment.
You're going to have to let me go play soon.
I'm going to let you go pick some balloons in a second.
Okay. But no, I will say that I was watching the teleprompter down here, and there were parts where the words would stop for quite a while, and he would go off script, and the crowd really, at least for a while, enjoyed it. The speech, of course, got quite long. And now we're hearing Nessun Dorma start playing another aria that's a big part of the Trump rally speech. Anyway, yes, Trump was relishing the moment, going off the teleprompter quite a bit.
All right, Danielle Kurtzleben, go have fun with some balloons, and we'll go up to the NPR booth where Mara Eliason and Franco Ordonez also watched the speech tonight. And Mara, that may not have been the Gettysburg Address, but if you think about the modern political convention is meant to unify a party and pivot to the general election. And in that regard, this seems like it was a very successful convention for Donald Trump.
Yeah. Oh, very successful convention. The speech surprised me. I think I was primed. We were all primed to hear something brand new or different. And it wasn't. It was a rally speech, as you said. He riffs in his rallies. All the greatest hits were in there. He's going to stop inflation on day one. Jobs will come roaring back. The border will be secured very quickly with one phone call. He's going to stop the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. The promises were kind of breathtaking in their hyperbole, but it reminds me of something that John Dickerson, you and I interviewed him recently. He wrote a book called The Hardest Job in the World about presidents, and he says that presidential candidates campaign as superheroes, and that certainly has been Donald Trump's brand, that he can fix everything, I alone can fix it, and this speech was just a litany of all the things that he's going to do with a snap of his fingers. And that was a very standard campaign speech. There wasn't a whole lot of reaching out for national unity. He did pay lip service to the word unity, but he also attacked the Democrats. He said they have to stop weaponizing the government. They have to stop doing these terrible things against us. And that's pretty standard for Donald Trump. So I do not think this speech was as big of a departure as his campaign suggested it might be.
Franco, what did you make of it?
Well, I thought what was interesting was, I agree with Mara in regards that it was not a departure from what he usually does. I think the one part that was a departure was him recounting the shooting.
Yes,
and when he said, "I'm not supposed to be here tonight," and you could hear the crowd saying, "Yes, you are." That was, it just shows kind of the benefit of, to be president, is the political benefits of surviving such a case. And folks were literally on the edges of their seats. Some people were crying. Politically, it was very effective. And then, of course, it moved to the standard stump speech. I think for me, though, what I think the big takeaway from the big picture, though, is kind of just the devotion that we saw all week, especially today, for Donald Trump, day after day after day. Today, Hulk Hogan, UFC boss president, Dana Carver,
Dana White.
And also, probably Dana White. Thank you, Sue.
From UFC.
From the UFC. And probably the craziest of them all, in my opinion, was Sean O'Brien, the president, the union boss for the Teamsters. I mean, this is a group of people that no one, I think, would ever have anticipated being at the Republican conventions, having such prominent roles. And these are people that are not held together by party. They're not held together by Republican ideology. They are held together by Trump. And I think that is just something is as significant to me as the length of that speech just was.
Yeah, this is what, look, I don't say this as a pejorative. This is what a cult of personality is.
Yeah.
It's about him. It's not necessarily about his positions or his issues. Everything was about strength, weakness. He is the strongest SOB. He is the most resilient man. That you heard throughout the entire convention, and also the story of being shot and how he felt and how he was serene and he could feel God with him, and then he described in minute detail what we've heard many times and seen in that picture, how he put his fist in the air and he felt the blood. I mean, this is
And as he was saying, the cameras, all the TVs behind us showed that picture. It must have been like 20 different images of that famous photo. It was very much a powerful moment. The imagery was very powerful.
All right, I do want to bring in White House correspondent Tamara Keith, because Tam, while you have spent the week in Milwaukee, it has been a very busy week for President Joe Biden and the state of the Democratic campaign. Where does it go from here?
Yeah, and I will note that former President Trump in his remarks kept referring to the to the current administration. He only said Biden's name, I think, twice, and only to say that he wasn't saying it on purpose because he was going to keep focusing on the current administration. Part of that is certainly a nod to the chaos that is ensuing the Democratic Party right now, the questions that are hanging over President Biden's candidacy and where it goes from here. And in talking to Democrats tonight, even while this was going on, I think that the campaign is really very much focused on drawing a contrast between the vision that Democrats have and the vision of the Republican Party and of Donald Trump. And I think certainly on the ground level, people knocking on doors, campaign volunteers, there's a huge campaign infrastructure set up for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Whether President Biden remains at the top of the ticket is pretty uncertain, but that infrastructure is there, and Democrats will be knocking on doors, but they might be talking a lot more about Democrats and down-ballot Democrats while there's still uncertainty up at the top.
All right, and I want to come back into studio with Ron Elving, senior editor and correspondent. Ron, I think we could say this every 4 years, but it seems more true now than ever. This is a race like no other.
Donald Trump has changed the calculus and changed the language, really, of American politics. It's always been a matter of exaggeration. It's always been a matter of people putting the very best face on their own platform and villainizing the other side. And we've seen that forever. But we really are, I think, in a different dimension of political reality and surreality at this point, because when Donald Trump gets started describing how things are, or talking about how he's going to make things, cures for cancer, cures for Alzheimer's and so forth, peace everywhere in the world, and every single job that's been created in the last several years going to an illegal immigrant. In fact, at one point he said 107% of all the jobs created had gone to an illegal immigrant. Now, how do you get above 100% of the jobs? I'm not really sure. But he's, as you said, riffing. And he's saying things that come into his head. And he has been successful with that. And so, to a certain degree, people it's almost futile to go ahead and fact check a speech like that, because so much of it is just proceeding from his imaginings, and it's an alternative reality, if you will, a phrase that has actually come up fairly often. Alternative facts, alternative reality in the Trump years. So here we are. He is at a zenith. It may not be his final zenith, but certainly he has reached a zenith in terms of this campaign and his comeback from his loss in 2020. And we will see where this goes and who his opponent winds up being in the Democratic Party. But we are in a new phase of the Trump era.
And do you think it's fair to say at this point in the race, Donald Trump is the undisputed frontrunner, despite all of the baggage he carries into this race, including but not limited to the fact that he was convicted on 34 felony counts?
Yes, because among other things, we don't even know who the other runners might be at this juncture. We don't even know who the other major party might be putting on its ticket. So it's very hard for him not to be the front runner. Plus, all the polls show that he is, at the very least, very competitive nationwide in terms of the popular vote, which he did not win in 2016, and he did not win in 2020, but he's closer to winning it this time around. And in addition to that, the key swing states that determine the Electoral College, as we've said many times, seem to be trending towards him, including Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the key states. And there are others, and an expanding map into other states as well. So, yes, it's very difficult not to call him the clear front runner.
It's going to be really interesting to see if there's a convention bump out of this one.
Indeed, he's already had a pretty incredible bump. One from the debate and another from the attempted assassination, and he's certainly gotten everything from that he possibly could have tonight.
All right. This has been live special coverage of the Republican National Convention from NPR News. I'm Susan Davis. Special thanks to member station WUWM 89.7, Milwaukee's NPR, for production help this week, and to all the NPR producers and engineers who made this first ever convention radio video simulcast happen. And of course, huge thanks to NPR's Ron Elving in studio with me all week long, and our entire team on air from Milwaukee tonight. NPR's Mara Eliason, Franco Ordonez, Danielle Kurtzleben, and Tamara Keith. Will have more analysis on the convention and what happens next tomorrow on Morning Edition, and you can always find the latest at npr.org. Thanks for listening. This is NPR News.
Support for NPR's elections coverage comes from Saatva, committed to making handcrafted mattresses that help lull people to sleep and keep them sleeping soundly. More information is at SAATVA.com/NPR.